Hello and welcome to episode 119 of Killer POV. I'm one of your hosts, Rob G. from Blumhouse.com. Also from Blumhouse.com is Bekah McKendry.
What up?
What's up? And
I can't be bought. I cannot be bought.
Elric Kane.
My name is Elric Kane.
Elric Kane, Guinness drinker.
How's the warm Guinness, boys?
You cannot be bought except by beer.
I will drink warm Guinness, but not warm whatever it was we had last week.
I don't know. What did Adam bring us last week?
I don't know, but they're
Adam
not as good
Lima,
as this.
thank you for the Guinness. Also, thank you to
Giovannis,
the director of Cub, who sent us a couple of copies of the import DVD.
That one's cool. Have you guys seen it yet?
No.
I reviewed it last week.
Yeah.
Which I
but
feel like I would.
Doesn't matter.
Well, I feel like I would have gone even more in depth if I'd remembered that Giovannis listened to the show. I feel like I skipped through it a little.
Well then, I'm gonna do what Elric Kane could and be a little more thorough.
He's gonna be thorough.
Take that.
Hey, I did liken him to trying to take over the Soul franchise, so that's not too bad, you know.
That's true. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for sending these. We're gonna check out Cub soon.
Yeah. We're super psyched.
And we got great guests coming on later today. Somebody that they're the type of guests that you just assume they're too busy because they're always working. You always hear them on stuff, but they're such nice guys. And I think Patrick was the one that said, "When are you going to have us on Killer POV?" I love that. When somebody says that, I was like, "What? You're not busy? You could come in? Great. We'll have you on."
And I'm watching the new season right now of Project Greenlight, which is my favorite thing on earth. Even when it's terrible, I love it. So to think it all started for them winning that is just so exciting.
Yeah. Amazing.
So that's going to be fun.
Yeah, so there is so much to talk about before that. Let's kick it off with Beyond Fest.
Oh my gosh, this has been a great festival so far. And I'm super psyched for tomorrow night, which is my birthday. And we're going
this is your birthday episode.
I know, kind of. Well, I didn't bring anything, so happy birthday, guys. But so tomorrow night, when it is my birthday, we're going to see The Devils at 10 o'clock, which I am so excited about. It's like the UK Uncut. So,
By the time this airs, you will see tweets about it.
That's true. Awesome. It would have been over.
Yes.
And I'm really tempted to go to the one before where they have Die Antwoord doing
the Eraserhead thing?
Eraserhead.
Yeah.
Just because how those two things even remotely
I hate seeing things that change things I love.
Right.
Like
that's sold out anyway.
I would react terribly to seeing Eraserhead. But the sound design of that movie is like basically the best sound design ever in a movie.
It is.
But yeah, no, it's fun.
But Die Antwoord is just kind of batshit. So
it could be cool.
Really fascinated. Somebody just drink when I said batshit. But I'd be
Keystone
really
Cops.
fascinated.
Keystone Cops. Keystone. My friend who said it's a drinking game now then wrote to me going, "Thanks, you kept me sane by calling her that time."
Thanks. But yeah, so I may have to go to that one just because,
Well, I think, are we all going? Friday night is The Mind's Eye, which is Joe Begos'
I'm going
movie.
to support that. I don't know if I can get to the Steve Moore concert before, but
cool.
I'm
going to check that one out.
Will not be at that one as much as I want to promote Joe and Graham Skipper.
Graham's really great.
Gardner's in it. Larry Fezzik.
Yeah, I've seen the rough version before they took out all the, improved all the effects. But the cool thing about what I saw is that he went so practical on this. Literally, the only CGI needed is to take out wires. That's how far, and there are things exploding every 5 minutes.
I am so
I got to say, I feel like he made a big leap with it, but I haven't seen what is a finished film.
One,
So, it's totally scanners, but it's,
If you're in LA while you're listening to us, you have time. It's happening tonight. So
tonight.
Oh yeah. So you still have time. I'm sure it will probably sell out at the end. By the end,
I think so.
Yeah,
no, I'm bummed. I'm shooting something this weekend. I can't say what yet, but I will soon within the next couple of weeks. But I'm really bummed that I'm missing the Wes Craven stuff on Sunday night.
Oh, that's right.
That sounded so kick ass.
Well, let's discuss what we have seen there so far. We all went to Fabio Frizzi, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. The fact that he performed for the first time in Los Angeles. It was supposed to be his U.S. debut, but he did debut in Austin a few days earlier.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
We'll forgive you, Fabio.
Anyone who plays the live score, the Cat in the Brain, is doing I'm just sitting there going, I'm sitting in a room watching clips of Fulci dressed as Elmer Fudd, lining to the composer score live. It's Cat in the Brain is just such a random movie.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what it was. It was a full on concert, but they had a screen behind them, and they would play clips from the respective movies that they were doing. And I really, I'm a huge score fan in general, but I loved what. He would play one long song, which kind of was an amalgamation of all the best cues, the most recognizable cues. So it was everything from The Psychic to Manhattan Baby to Cat in the Brain.
Yeah.
City of the Living Dead was great. The Beyond.
I was
obviously.
hoping, because he hadn't played The Beyond, and he did Cat in the Brain, I was just waiting for him like a mic drop and walk off. And, be like, and just leave everyone on Cat in the Brain. No Beyond for you.
No, we were ending on Cat in the Brain.
Yeah.
That's how it's going down. Now, I liked all of his Westerns that he did, too.
Yeah, that's a good movie. For our friend Oren, who listens occasionally, that's his favorite Fulci by far, is that Western. And
right.
I've only seen it once. I remember it being really slow and somewhat awkward, but it had Fabio Testi, so it's worth seeing it. I'm going to rewatch it.
What was the first Western that we saw clips from? I didn't know that. It was
I think they're both the same one.
It was a guy, he kind of looked like Johnny Depp in a poncho.
Yeah, that's Fabio Testi. Four of the Apocalypse.
Four of the Apocalypse.
Four for the Apocalypse.
Okay.
It's definitely on Netflix DVD.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
But,
it looks really cool from the clips.
I saw it at a party, so it's not like seeing it. Like I'm at a party where we're all trying to watch it, and it just is kind of awkward and slow, and you didn't really get engaged, but I got to revisit it.
But that was cool. I mean, his whole set was so, what you realize about him as an artist is like, when you see these type of shows, it's like so eclectic because, there's the kind of spooky, scary score stuff, and then the Western music was like songs, like kind of country pop songs.
Like they had lyrics.
Totally,
in English.
And he was singing in English, which was awesome. And you could tell his Beatles influence. I saw I think I saw a tweet from Beyond Fest saying that he sound checked with Beatles songs, which I thought was great.
That's pretty cool.
That's kind of cool.
He played a soundtrack to a clips of a movie that no one had seen there, and I'm the only one who's ever screened that film.
The second I saw it, I thought of you.
Yes, it's called Saint Frankenstein, and it's by Scooter McCreery or whatever from Pango. But I'm the only person who's ever shown that movie because it was part of Betamax, so it was part of the Underground, and then it got pulled out of Betamax because it's too fucking good. And not to diss on Betamax, but it really was like a totally different kind of level of what it was, and so they pulled it. Also, he was getting into festivals and wanted to show it and couldn't if it stayed in Betamax, so it's now out of Betamax, so it'll never screen again in the way I showed, which is crazy. And then now it's going to it was about to play at the Spanish film festival, the Sitges, this week, and so I hadn't really even noticed that Frizzi had done the score to it, but I remember that movie being like kind of mind-blowing. And then so as when I was watching the clips, I was going, oh, that's cool, like I've shown that here, no one will ever see it, The
lead girl in it who's playing the monster,
that's how she really looks.
That's it's some type of disorder, but she's absolutely amazing. I've seen her in a couple of other things before, and she came across, I'd run into her at a couple of festivals where she was in shorts and things like that. Just absolutely amazing actress. So.
Somebody told me that she was discovered on one of those sites where people are like, they're reclaiming being proud of how they look and their body and stuff like that. And it was on, I can't remember exactly the story behind how she was cast, but it was really like kind of inspiring.
She's like an actual model now. It's quite beautiful
and amazing.
Stuff, so.
I don't know if that was her voice in the short. I can't remember, but it was an amazing voice. But anyway, Frizzi was
Saint
great.
Frankenstein.
I would say what was interesting about it is because he's a composer, and I'm comparing it to like when Goblin came. The energy was so high voltage with Goblin that it was such a different experience.
Yeah.
Like, and I loved Frizzi's music. I almost when I'm listening to these scores, I almost could be alone in a room at home listening. Whereas I remember when I was at Goblin, it felt more like going to a rock concert or something. So they're totally different experiences. I love them both, but it was interesting. I
also love how happy Frizzi was.
Yeah,
I mean, just like
he seemed excited to be where he was.
And very appreciative.
He also mentioned having done a lot of scores even for Lamberta Bava, not under that name.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So we'll have to research which ones he did under an alias.
Yeah.
So he played a couple of tracks from that. Yeah.
Did you catch anything else at Beyond Fest?
I did. I've actually saw a few. So I saw Mike Williamson, who's been on the show before. His short film Deathly, which is I'd seen the rough cut. But finished, it's really freaking good. It's like honestly one of the best shorts, not because he's a friend, one of the best shorts I've seen in a while. It's the score's awesome. It's Clint Mansell.
Oh, okay. Who did his last
short. This just played at
Stoker, I think.
Yeah, he might have. He did Beyond a Fantastic Fest, and it played, and it's very Tales from the Crypt. It reminds me like a really good 10-minute version of a scarier Tales from the Crypt, not one of their sillier episodes, but one of the ones that are a little more unnerving. And even his kind of style is playful. I definitely would go so far as to say Mike Williamson is a better director than he has film taste. You heard it here first. You can quote me on your biography, Mike. But that said, it was paired with like I've never seen an audience hollow out more. I get the feeling they played Mike's short to guarantee that they had an audience in this movie because it was the triptych German Angst. The German Angst, and basically 2 minutes into this thing, after Mike's short ended, because it's a hometown crowd, at least half the crowd were gone. This is in the small theater. And German Angst, I decided I would stay for it because I was curious, but I am not a guy who's into movies for shock value. What I like is a horror film that's a good movie that shocks me, or a film that I get into the characters or story, and then it shocks me. Because to me, even Irreversible does that. I'm in it, and then it shocks me. But this movie is, from some of these, they like the guy who made Necromantic as one of them.
It's just an anthology of shock films, right?
I think so. I mean, like there's stories and messages there for sure, and some of them are pretty well made. But let me put it this way. Female genital mutilation, check. Male castration, check. Nazis, check. So it's like literally all these things that you could do that are extreme happen very early, and you're kind of like, all right. And towards the end, there's a couple really interesting flourishes or interesting creature that was made, but it definitely wasn't for me. And I felt like this, it's just not my bag, because I didn't feel there was enough to hang your hat on,
But I like that you stayed through the end.
I did. Look, so when I'm interested, I'm like, I'll sit through I'll go see Necromantic if it's in a theater. You know what I mean? I'm curious. I just wouldn't watch it at home.
I've seen Necromantic in a theater, and it's much better than watching it at home.
Yeah,
you feel almost arty, where at home you just feel sleazy.
Yeah, I still like to get in on a story somehow, even if it's thin. Like I think a lot of the art house and weird stuff I like can be pretty thin, but something about these ones put me off. So I thought Deathly, what was funny, I felt Deathly improved even more because of what it was, and had no thematic connection whatsoever. But the big one I went to, which I could never have known how cool it was going to be, but Evil Dead was going to play Evil Dead 2 with Bruce Campbell in conversation with Edgar Wright, and everyone was excited, sold out.
Yep.
And I was excited about it, but I was also kind of like, even on the day, I was like, but I've seen them so many times. Had never seen Evil Dead on the big screen, I don't think. And so I show up.
That's actually a really fun one to see that way.
Yeah, you know what? That movie, seeing it like this too, just reminded me like a lot of where my own passion for filmmaking came from, largely from that movie, because it was like one of the first horrors I saw that was so handmade that I remember going, and I remember we made like a little short when we were like 16 where we put the camera on a spade and the spade's flying through the air and that kind of shit, And so halftime comes after Evil Dead, and it's fucking, it really was pretty incredibly enjoyable. And then Bruce Campbell comes out into the huge applause, and he's totally on form. And there was a lot of word early on that stars that they were going to play. Bob Murawski actually told me that they were really pushed to try to show the pilot, and then at the last minute, stars were just reticent, and you can understand probably why, but it would have been the greatest crowd to premiere to. I mean, it would have probably torn the place. The trailer tore the place down, Anyway, so Bruce Campbell gets up there and he says, I'm going to bring out a little friend who, knows a few things about these movies. And Sam Raimi walks out.
It was a bum that he
found. It's a bum on the street. And Sam comes out to a place that just goes fucking apeshit, because anyone who's listening knows that we will never have Sam on the show, because Sam doesn't really talk about horror. He doesn't really talk about this kind of stuff anymore. And
he's also very shy and awkward.
He's very shy. And I asked, I did see Bob afterwards, and he said the thing about Sam is he doesn't want to do this. You can harass him. He'll say, no. But when he actually does it, he has the best time of his life. And I've never, like, honestly, and I didn't want to rub it into people who didn't go there, because it was one of those things where, like, I knew how awesome it was, but I also I felt bad. I didn't want to say, Rob, you missed out. But what I'll say is, like, it was like seeing two people because it could have been anything. It could have been them just like be bullshitting and trying to sell their movie. Not once did they even mention the new thing. Didn't even come up that they're promoting a new fucking series. All they did is talk about how they met in school, the films they made in school, how they learned to make a horror film, and the making of Evil Dead. And then it was really like electric. And what was cool was Edgar Wright's, and Edgar Wright did a pretty good job of keep bringing it back to like questions he was actually interested in. Like, but tell me about those Super 8 movies. What they're all comedies, blah blah. But his inspiration was the thing I've talked about here a million times, which is the Jonathan Ross Incredibly Strange Film Show. That first interview that Bruce and Sam did on that was one of his big inspirations to become a filmmaker too. Yeah. So it was really interesting. But I'll share just a couple because we don't have time. But two of the things, and a lot of Evil Dead nerds learned things that there'd be like rumors about how certain things happen. And they go, Bruce made that up, or Sam made it up, and they were like dispelling the rumors. But my two of my favorites were one. They said so Sam said he was not a horror fan. He did not know that horror films were any good, and was just into comedies. So they basically planned, let's make our first feature. It's going to be a comedy. And they went to the investor, and the investor goes, you're not making a comedy, you have to make a horror film. He's like, I can't make a horror film. I don't know what a horror film is. And he said, go to the drive-in, watch a horror movie, and if you think you can make a movie better than that, come back and we'll talk. And he goes, all right. And so they went to a drive-in, and he gets there one day, and it just happens to be playing Halloween. And he watches Halloween, and he goes back to the investor, and the guy's like, so, you gonna make a better movie than that? He's like, no. He's like, nope, I didn't know horror films could actually be good. That one's fucking amazing. What do I do? And he goes, go back to the movies, go back. So he said he went back to a few, and he said eventually he started seeing, Sam's like, then I started seeing the Italian films, and then I saw some of the Spanish horror, and suddenly I was like, I can do better than that one, and I can do a little better than that one, maybe not as good as that one. And so he like gave him the confidence to come back. And him and Bruce said, this was probably my favorite thing I learned from it, was they're like, so we'd go to these movies and we'd study every horror film at drive-in to try to learn how to make a film. And he goes, what you don't know is in Detroit, this is in Detroit, Michigan or whatever, the drive-in's brutal audience, like brutal. And he said what they do if they start getting bored or don't like a part is everyone in the audience shines their lights on full on the screen and totally ruin the movie for everyone. And so they do it constantly throughout the movie. And he said, so they go, we're taking notes on every movie on what we shouldn't cut out. And they look at each other and they're like, all right, less dialogue, more monster, more blood. And so they kept doing that. So that was one of the anecdotes. And the only one, this one's for super short, and there was obviously a ton, but the movie, obviously everyone knows, was originally called Book of the Dead. And I didn't know how they actually titled it Evil Dead. And there's this old, I think he's like 80 years old, ran a distribution chain. They couldn't sell the movie. They went to all the places trying to sell it. Yeah. And the guy has it, and he's like, all right, kids, come in here. And he writes on the board the Book of the Dead. And he's like, all right, who needs that word? Cuts it out. And then he's like, book. Oh, you want to lose 3/4 of your audience? No one reads. Cuts out book. And then he goes, I don't even know. He crosses out, and so it's left with just dead. He's like, all right, I'll give you guys two choices. You can either call it The Evil Dead, or you can call it 101% Dead. Just out of nowhere, 101%. So literally everyone in the audience, we were kind of all joking. You could tell that everyone wanted to go and make a movie called 101% Dead. I'm now.
Sure, yeah.
And so that's The Evil Dead was born, and then they didn't talk too much about 2, and then 2 started, and it was fun seeing 2 again. But I feel like I could have walked out after 1 and that convo equally high, because it was. Yeah. It reminded. I got to say, like post Jump Cut, I was having a little bit of that. You're feeling like falling into a bit of a rut of life. I got to say, it really re-energized something in me that has always been there since I saw those originally films, and which is great. You literally can't ask for more than that from somebody, in a conversation. So here's to Sam and Bruce, good men, and I'll end. The only other thing I saw is saying I think you're gonna freaking love, Rob, and I loved it, but I don't think I'll love it as much as you loved it.
Really?
From New Zealand, Deathgasm.
Oh yeah.
Ant Timpson. This is what I'm gonna, when I write this book, it'll be called Ant Timpson and the Kiwi Splatter Comedy, because he is between Housebound and Deathgasm and a little bit, what we do in the shadows a little bit, even though he didn't produce that one. It's a pretty amazing comeback for New Zealand. We haven't really had horror since Peter Jackson's early splatter films. So
Housebound.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. He did Housebound.
Oh, he did,
and produced it. And that's 2 in 2 years. And What We Do in the Shadows. So that's like best 3 horror comedies probably in the last 2 years. So It's kind of hard to believe. But Deathgasm's really fun. And it's all about music. It's all about metal. And the characters are really likable. It's really fun. I really had a lot of fun watching it.
It's on VOD now.
I watched it on VOD. So
I think it's on Amazon Prime. I saw. So I'm going to check it out.
It really is a lot. I actually think it's like one of the perfect kind of Halloween season. Like throw it on and you'll get you in the mood. Because it's also silly and crazy, but the effects are awesome. So I'm really happy to see that. And if we ever get Ant back in the country, he almost came in last time, I think we'll have a lot of fun talking about splatter.
Sure. Oh yeah, I messaged him last time and was like, "When are we getting you on?" He said he wanted to come on next time.
He was meant to come on, and I don't remember what happened.
Right. Well, the only other thing I saw at Beyond Fest that I had to talk about was a movie that you actually really wanted to see, Elric. It's called February. And I kind of went last minute. I didn't realize it was playing. I've heard a little bit of buzz about it coming out of Fantastic Fest. I know Jerry Smith wrote a pretty high praise for it on our Blumhouse site. And it's written and directed by Oz Perkins. And so I went and caught it last night. And it was... The whole night was just an interesting, surreal experience anyway, because those of you that listen know that I did the Psycho Legacy documentary, and I had a lot of interaction only via email and maybe once on the phone with Oz. I'd never met him in person, but a lot of that was just kind of to get his seal of approval and say, look, I'm approaching this material regarding your father and his work with nothing but respect and, that sort of thing. You just want to make sure that your intentions are pure when you're doing that sort of project. So, we've interacted a lot. We have mutual friends, and he seems like a nice guy, but we've never met until last night. And it was really great. It was literally a 2-second thing right before the movie started where he just recognized me and we shook hands and said hello. And then February started. And, God, I don't even know how to talk about this movie because it's one of those horror movies that left me pretty shaken up. it's not the sort of thing that while you're watching it, it's an aesthetic, a feel that the whole thing, that once it all wraps, I'm going to be haunted by it for a couple days. And I want to say I love it, but I also want to say that it falls in this weird category of movies that have so much horrific material in them that I almost don't want to watch them that often. Like, it's great, but because it's so, like, I even told Tim this after the screening. It's like, look, I love The Exorcist. I love, Carrie. I love, these type of movies. But I've only seen The Shining, for example. I've seen them less times than I can count on both hands. Like, I've only seen them a few times because once you have that experience, it's so potent that you don't want to, like, kind of ruin it by watching it over again. That's why I watch horror comedies all the time.
Yeah, they're more rewatchable.
Yeah.
Why are you the fourth person? Because everyone told me this. Particularly me. I don't know why. Everyone said, Elric, this is going to be your favorite film of the year.
Elric, you will love it. Bekah, you will not.
Oh, so it's slow moving and arty.
Somebody told me the first 2/3 are very slow and that the third is absolutely incredible. That's what I've heard from people. So I don't know.
I don't know, because I like a lot of movies like that. Like Red, White, and Blue is like that.
It
Red, White, and Blue is
feels
slow.
the best. And this just doesn't mean it's like those movies, but it just feels like The Shining and The House of the Devil.
Oh, cool.
If you can try to mix those two things, because it is very
but that
slow.
sounds like something I would love. Now I'm intrigued.
But you don't have a lot of patience, and that's the thing. And it really does require. It has that. It has that sort of vibe where it really requires your patience, and then you will be rewarded by the insanity of the last 30 or so minutes. And it's not really insane. It's just that the way everything he's almost telling like 3 different character stories concurrently and how they connect, but you can't put the pieces together. There's even moments where you see things from different angles and you're kind of like, oh, that's kind of bizarre.
It's interesting because I hadn't heard anything about him wanting to be a filmmaker, because I knew him through, my friend Mark Kelly and Nick Simon, who co-wrote a couple films with him.
And he started as an actor.
Oz and Mark Kelly starred in Nick Simon's film Removal, which you can get. And I had only heard of him as an actor and he'd done some co-writing. So with Nick's film coming out, I've just been hearing about Nick's film, and so it's weird that suddenly, Oz has got a film out. So that's interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to give too much away. Those are the things
I don't want to know any plot.
Those are the things I can tell you. And again, I got a lot more insight specifically after I heard him talk. He did a very brief Q&A after, and he's just a really sharp, intellectual, interesting guy that really, coming from that family, obviously, he has a very interesting sense of film history and what works in films. And he even referenced, somebody said, like, there's a scene pretty early on with one of the main girls in it who is Kierna Shippa. She's from Mad Men. She was excellent. She's the lead character in it. But there's a scene of her talking to, like, she's at kind of like this this religious boarding school or whatever, and it's about to be winter break. And somebody asked, like, I felt like that was reminiscent of kind of The Shining. He's like, nope, absolutely. Yeah. He's like, I wanted that vibe, it's the same windows behind him and that vibe, whatever. I didn't even pick up on that. Cool. But it definitely has a lot of little horror homages, just things that he thinks works for it. And
did it sound like there's a chance it'd come out this year or not?
Yes. Yeah, I think somebody did pick it up, and I already messaged him. He's said he'd come on the show when it's
because the worst news I've heard all year was when they finally gave an announcement, Green Room's coming out, and then they're like, April next year, and I'm like, mother.
I know. That's
like the only thing if I could see one movie this year and then I wasn't allowed to go to the movies again, it'd be that movie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, go into February completely open if you can, and you will be rewarded by a very strange, almost bordering on drama that then has some shocking stuff in it. But I really liked it. I was really blown away.
Kind of connected. I do need to plug quickly that next Monday, I believe, Nick Simon, who was a guest here on our West Craven, his movie will finally premiere in LA. It's going to be at Screamfest, and he just called me, asked me if I would moderate it for him, just because I've known so much about the project. So I'm going to go, and he's going to show it. I think it was a late edition because they're just decided to show it. So I believe tickets are still available. So if it's Friday that this is playing, Girl in the Photographs, the last West Craven produced work. And I'm excited to see how the final. I've only seen scenes of it, so I'm excited to see it myself.
Cool.
So
yeah, I'll be there.
Nice. I'll be quick because I see our guests lingering outside the window. So I watched Cooties, which Rob watched last week, and I thought was super fun. I highly recommend it to fans. If you have not seen it yet, go see it. And I was really skeptical when I heard that it was a zombie film again, because I have just grown so just out of love with zombie films just so quickly because of the saturation of them.
Zombie children.
But yeah. zombie children. And then I was like, I don't know, that sounds kind of overdone. But it's hilarious. And I will say there are some points where every single person in it is a character. And I don't mean like they have good characterization. I mean like, okay, you be the slut. You be the weird religious guy. You're going to be obsessed with exercise. So every single person.
So it's broad comedy. Like,
yeah, very. Yeah. And that got a little bit trying throughout, where there were just times when I was like, everyone quit with the witty retorts. Just, be normal for once.
Maybe it's a commentary on Glee or something, that kind of world.
It kind of felt like that because it is a group of teachers fighting off a group of students. And that's not killing anything. You find that out in the first 5 minutes. But yeah, and it's fun. And I have to agree with Rob that I'm pretty sure that the filmmakers just said, how can we kill a bunch of kids? Let's make them all zombies. And then the whole movie kind of becomes about creative ways to kill the kids.
Yes. And do you agree with me that the opening 90 seconds is the most horrific thing you've ever seen?
I didn't think I was going to make it through the first 90 seconds.
It's
the
really
first 90
it's
seconds,
really gross.
They literally, and it's weird because then the rest of the movie is just as disgusting with all of these like exploding heads and, kids and biting and things like that.
As someone who feeds his son chicken nuggets, I don't know if I should see it.
Yeah.
It'll limit my repertoire of cooking.
No, and I mean, Marnie eats chicken nuggets all the time. But but for the first 90 seconds of the film, it's literally just watching a chicken nugget go from chicken to the fryer to a kid's mouth. And it's just like, my God. Like, I did not think I was going to be able to continue because if the rest of the film had been in that same kind of vein, I would not have made it through.
I'm shocked you're here because I know what's playing as we're recording this.
What is?
The one thing that gets Bekah excited in this world.
American Horror Story?
Yeah, the new American Horror Story.
That's what DVDRs are for.
Well, by this time we will have seen it by the Friday, but I'm curious. Predictions, is this going to be the worst or is it going to have a swing back? Are we going to have a swing back?
I'm really hoping this one is the swing back. Right. I've been watching a lot of this stuff. One of the effects people is a friend of mine. I've been getting some kind of inside scoops. I'm really, really hoping that this is the swing back. And
I hope so.
I don't have cable, so I bought the Amazon season pass for the entire season so that it appears immediately as soon as the show airs. I will be watching it tonight when I get home. Right. I had hoped to be doing reports on it for Blumhouse, but I'm not going to kid myself that I could go home after this and somehow watch it, write an article, and have it up by 8 a.m.
It's too much.
I'm not that good. So
all the other sites would have done that, Bekah. I can't believe it.
So at about 3 o'clock, I'll get to bed and I'll see you guys at 8 a.m.
Sounds fair.
So, yeah.
Cool. Well, really quickly, before we bring them on, I had one more film I wanted to mention. Actually, several, but I'll save them for next week, too. But one that I really wanted to talk to Elric about, I finally got to see We Are Still Here. That just came out earlier this week on Blu-ray. Along with several movies came out this week.
Seems fitting given that the Frizzi concert.
No, you know
definitely there's a definitely
this
connection.
This plays perfectly for it because so it was written and directed by Ted Geoghegan, and it's a predominantly short film, and I thought it was okay. Like when it first started, I actually had a tough time kind of getting into it or figuring out the vibe. But that said, I loved like the last 20 minutes. Like it's a lot of buildup and a lot of, I don't know where this is going. I don't know if I like this, but then I thought it had a really great like kind of conclusion to it. I love the effects.
The effects are really
Larry
great.
Fessenden is always great.
Yeah, Larry injects a really fun vibe.
Even though he's brief.
The more I've thought about it over time, the more I wonder if some of the clunkiness, I won't say it was purposeful, but because it is trying to be like Fulci inspired, I wonder if it had subtitles, if somehow it would have worked.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's what I felt, when I was watching it, that's what I felt is maybe in the first half, there was almost a clunkiness to the narrative, not to take away from what Ted was trying to do. I just didn't get exactly what he was going for. And then when everything wrapped up, I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. But then Ted did a guest editorial on the Blum site about his love of Eurohorror and Fulci. And he says in it that he's like, I love that those movies are just like weird narrative and weird stuff happening.
It's like dream logic.
So as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, so he's totally going for that, like kind of, dare I say, clunky European, Fulci type of, because the narratives on those are kind of a little off.
I didn't think this ever gets to dream logic. This one didn't for me. Like I would have loved that. I felt like it got the clunky part, has some great effects. The kills, a couple of the kills are really interesting. But what it failed at, which is it's just a bummer because the one thing it could have done, I think, is getting the tension tension before the kills. Instead, they just happen randomly. But that is probably kind of Fulci-ish.
And I mean,
the shock factor.
They were kind of shocking in that, where there's one where they're in a car and you see the ghost in the rear view, and then it just comes.
That's great.
Yeah, and that's like one of my favorite scenes. But then, and I guess this again follows the Fulci thing, is the people that I was watching it with were immediately like, how do the ghosts leave the house? The ghosts can't leave the house. They're house ghosts.
Yeah, looking
and then
for
I
rules.
Was like, well, it makes sense if, Fulci,
they don't
I think it's cool that a lot of people,
rules,
it seems to be popular though, and I think a lot of people really are gravitating towards. I'm sure the creatures have a big part to do with that. So I'm glad. It's one of those films that I would never say anything bad about, because I want it to be successful. I enjoyed watching it, but it's just not, I just feel for me it didn't quite connect with me,
Right. It's it's not like one of like, oh, this is the greatest thing to come out this year, but it's interesting and good enough that I think people should check it out regardless.
Yeah, and definitely check out Ted's piece on Blumhouse.com. That was a great article that he did.
Yeah, totally. All right, well, that's that.
Awesome.
Let us get these gents on the air.
Yeah, they're going to write a new film called Feast. Tune in.
Alrighty, we are back, and we are sitting with our very, very special guest. It only took 119 episodes to ask these guys on. Sorry, guys.
They're really busy.
But yeah, I said at the top of the show that I just assume, because you guys are conquering the world on a regular basis, that you're just way too busy to come on our show. And then I think it was Patrick that said to me, when are you guys going to have us on Killer POV? And I was like, holy shit, when are you available? Let's make it happen. So welcome, Marcus Dunstan and Patrick Melton.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, good to see you. Good to see you.
Finally happened, right on. Yeah.
Folk heroes of Project Greenlight.
That's right.
Forget all the other stuff. To me, you'll always be the folk heroes who conquered the
let's
world.
go back.
Because Elric, you were getting
Elric
ready
wants
to
to go back to
tell
the
this
beginning.
story off air, and then we were like, save it for the fucking show.
I probably said it on John's, when John was here, but John Galluzzo. But for me, but probably all horror people, if you happen to, I'd watch the Project Greenlight and just be I'm a cinephile, so I'm a movie guy. But none of the movies they're making interested me. And then finally, when they picked John, I remember the moment where they choose John, and he's he does the thing with his mouth, and he does the little song, and then it cuts to Mad Bang going, it has to be this guy, and you're like, what? What on earth are they thinking? But then you look at his work, and you go, oh yeah, because he had again a really interesting point of view, kind of like the new director who's been picked this season. He's actually a good director, and then you guys come on, and like none of you know each other, but then since moving here, I know you all as people who know each other. But back in the season, I watched it in New Zealand, and it literally like inspired me and goes, what, moving to LA can't be that hard.
Wait, so what about Jason Mann versus John Gallagher, fight to the death? Who wins?
Man. I mean, John wins everything.
Yeah, my vote's on Gallagher.
He wins just by sitting it out and saving his energy.
Hold on. Gallagher's blindfolded. Jason Mann is dipped in syrup.
Oh, yeah.
Who wins?
Oh, yeah. Well, he still has Clue in his corner.
So he can smell him. He can smell him, but he can't quite get him.
I recently... Who is the DP of Feast? And he's not in the documentary.
Oh, yeah.
I have a device in my pocket.
He's the guy who...
Thomas Calloway.
Tom Calloway.
And yet, like that, I think was Tom, man, totally graceful and neat. And yet John also was operating one of those cameras. Like he was shouldering the beast.
Yeah.
And
John's
together,
a great DP.
Yes.
Really great DP.
And I remember there was one shot, bless his heart, and, this didn't make that show, but he was setting it up and everyone was on him, like, dropping their experience cards all around John. He's like, no, I just want you to really point that light into the lens, and I think you'll see something we could all agree on. And it's the longest shot in the movie, and it's a beautiful silhouette because the sun is rising.
Yeah.
We don't have an exterior, John. We just built the set in a garage here. It's going to show the garage. Like, I don't think so. I think it's going to blow it out and look like a sunrise.
Wow.
Really good John impression, I gotta say.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those people, like if you just saw the films that, his mainstream work, you'd have one view of him. But then if you see all the other stuff that they've worked on as a family, you start to go, oh, there's this really artistic side to what they do. And he has a great eye, a genuinely great eye. It almost could have been a DP in a different way. But anyway, all I was going to say is he's just one of those people, if I could have met anyone when I moved here, probably would have been the three of you, because it just fills you with so much hope, even though it's a TV show and it's manufactured to an extent. But I do have one question about that. I'm curious, when they... say how John was treated in that, especially because he's the one on set. Is that how much is that heightened because of the cameras, the way everyone was responding to him, or would that have happened to John anyway? Knowing John,
this didn't make the show either. But John was going to defeat that process with honesty. So if cameras show up, wake him up. day one to get there, and he's already in his tub, not wearing a stitch, and says, "Come on in."
Yeah.
At that point, no knife was going to stab him.
Yeah.
Like, nothing. It's like, I'm protected by my family. I'm grateful he's in. So it was interesting that his survival tactic was already in play. It just was like, you're not going to change me.
To be realer than reality.
Absolutely.
Not
Like,
constructed.
There weren't many problems at all. The actual production was pretty seamless.
Which you would never get from the show.
No.
Right.
I thought the show made it look like it's, chaos and
Well, I
everyone
think
hating
it
him.
has to.
The AD.
We had plenty of time, and just when we were done, it was fine. And then we did go back and shoot some stuff. I don't know if you remember, but that was just to make it bigger. And, and that was a reaction to the Bob Weinstein scene and being like, I could do something with this, but we need a little bit more. And so it was like, hey, actually, I think it's on the show when
Andrew Ronan.
Ronan's like, here's $500,000. What do you want to do? Huh.
Well, it was amazing. Like episode 1 or 1.5, they had him and they set up and we're sitting at his desk. And we're like, "Hi, Andrew. This is John. This is Marcus. This is Patrick." And he's like, he looks over, gets the nod from the camera. "By the way, just because you won a contest doesn't mean I can't fire you at any point."
That's awesome.
Well, but like 10 minutes before, we saw him as we were going up to the office to the meeting. He's like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" We're like, "Oh, he's so nice, he's so friendly." And then he does that, like he goes in the Darth Vader mode, and you're like, "Oh, okay."
That's
so
awesome.
this guy's the bad guy in this.
Yes. And then
but then afterwards, like he's back to, "Hey, so that was a great meeting." We're like, "Wait, what do you mean? You just told us on camera." Just turned on, you just fire us.
How do you because you guys, and I think one of John's problem, and I don't want to talk about John, but it's like managing a career. How do you keep from going from one project to the next? And I remember seeing John during Piranha. He's like, "Oh, I don't have an agent or a manager." And I was like, "Dude, you get one of those, and then you get the next gig." He's like, "No, I don't need that." But the way you guys have gone from, obviously you're just always writing. I assume that part of it's just you're a very creative duo, and you're just always pumping stuff out. But getting that first gig post Feast, how hard is that?
That was actually during Feast. Our first post Feast gig was right in the middle of shooting, and it was Highlander: The Source.
Whoa, that's 5 of the series.
You're welcome.
Is it out? That exists as a movie? I'm gonna plead ignorance here.
It was made. We didn't. So
is Mario Van Peebles a Highlander by then? He's actually graduated to Highlander.
in the source of the Highlander series, we were brought in to rewrite, and this is the first thing we'd ever worked on. And so Feast was the first script we wrote together, and we had no clue what actually to do and how to actually work together at that time for the most part, like other than Feast, what we were working on. And so we're like, okay. So I'll write the first act, Patrick, and then Marcus will write the second act, and then I'll write the third act, and then we'll put it together. And so I wrote the first act. It was like 30 pages. I wrote the third act, was 30 pages. Marcus wrote the second act, which was 95 pages. So we had 145-page script.
Brisk script.
Not bad for 2 weeks.
We're like, it's really good, though. And so, so it never quite...
Who was the Highlander in that one? Adrian Paul?
That would be Adrian Paul.
So it's like the series.
No.
It was connected to the series.
But I thought we had he died and went to hell and then came back.
Whoa.
And I think Pinhead might have been in it.
Whoa. Hellraiser Pinhead crossover.
Like it was
epic.
This is like the Dimension heydays where it was like, put some children corn in it. And we're like, he's in a corn maze.
That can be only one. Great line.
And to Greenlight's effect, Patrick and I were given this was a groundbreaking experiment in social media called the blog that they would post.
Yeah, take yourself back 10 years.
Yeah,
yeah, and it was the digital typewriter of its day. Like we could type faster than the first computer we worked on. We'd have to turn it off every 20 minutes because it would overheat. So at this point, we're like, this is groundbreaking technology. I never had a laptop till that show, and then all of a sudden we had a nice little HP thing.
It was not little. Remember how big those were?
It was the size of the briefcase Tom Cruise has in Collateral. But
we could control the NASA satellite. Yeah. It was amazing power.
Compared to the futon we'd been typing on a week prior, not bad.
But then the weird they would make these weird clicks. Remember with the old what was a HP?
Yes.
HP. Like they used to make these weird clicks and something start doing something and it's like what's happening here?
You hear the fan click on when it started to overheat. I had one of those.
And you unplug it, it'd still be going on, and you're like, what's going on? So we got those for free.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to curse?
Yeah, you can say
Yeah,
that.
yeah, you're fine.
No.
First brand new electronic I'd ever touched. And we had our first office together, laptop face to face, back to back, across from a table. Open it up, power it up, talking about the show. I must have been out of my sight for 0.2 seconds. This one goes on. You remember we typed in? I'm like, I didn't know about the internet. All he did is he reached over without me looking, he typed in shiteater.com. And then, so I went back, and then the show follows me, and I'm like, and thank you, Hewlett Packard, for letting it. Oh my God!
I made it his homepage, and so he couldn't get it off.
I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to do it.
Bastard! That's funny.
Like early computer hijinks. That was.
Yeah, I wonder if that site's still going strong.
I think it became TMZ.
That's funny.
Early days of TMZ. You know what? I'd love to ask a little bit about. When I had actually met the Gulaghers back with Sage Stallone back in New Jersey when they were promoting Vic, his short, and immediately, of course I knew who Clue was, but immediately I was just so taken aback by kind of the warmth of that family. And also the film history, the fact that all of them educated me right off the bat, just by talking, and not in a way that was condescending by any means. It was just like very excited about talking about film and stuff. And since the first feast, I feel like you guys have immediately become part of that family. I think of them and I think of you guys in relation because of that. And obviously you've done a ton of movies together. So I don't know. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because that's kind of a rare thing in the business, getting to work with people and then have that kind of, family camaraderie.
Absolutely. The show, the reality show, really wanted opponents. And I think we've told the anecdote before where, went to the restroom, found a shot list that one of the camera guys had left in there from the show, and it was their script for what they were telling. And it was just trying to highlight points of conflict. And if it wasn't organic, it was a shot list on how to create it. Capture director, wiping forehead, need this, need silhouette of, if someone isn't shouting, get the back of their head, like, whoa.
Yeah.
So we were pretty quick to catch on that, they're going to try to divide us. They tried to divide Pat and I right away. And fortunately, we were like, no, you're not going to do that. It's my friend, I'm like, okay, not going to happen. So then it's like, well, they're going to tell the story of Cinderella. We were supposed to be the wretched stepsisters. And then John's toil was going to, flip for the grand ball at the end, which was the premiere.
I fully embraced that role. But
you're still trying to take him down.
And I'm not joking. That was the plot.
The narrative,
and if you watch the show, because season 1 of Project Greenlight is Othello. Pat Peach is Iago whispering misdeeds into Othello, getting into his head. And you're like, wow, it's just fiction. So we used our blogs to be like, by the way, this is what actually happened. Well, then we're
asked not to do the blog anymore.
You guys got thrown off your blog.
Our own blog.
This week we'll not be publishing what you had to say.
Wow.
If you guys don't play ball, we'll take away something else too. You're like, whoa, got it, sweet. So right away it was Tom Gulager's birthday, and this was right getting into prep, and we made a point not to tell the cameras. Cameras were not didn't know it was Tom's birthday. But we did, and so we showed up because we could start to see, people polishing the wedges for reality show's sake. And we're like, no, man, this is that won't work. It's going to kill our movie. Come on. And after that party, that was the sealant. We became boring for them, which I think is our greatest achievement.
You're not reality show people, guys.
That was like a different time. Like this was before Omarosa, and these shows had just sort of started to a certain extent, and we had seen the other shows, so we knew kind of what not to do, right? And so that's as soon as we showed up at the Roosevelt for that pitch thing, and they made us sign something and put the cameras on us, you're just like, what am I supposed to do? Because you had really no point of reference at that point for what I'm supposed to do. Now it's like, I'm supposed to be a complete lunatic, so then I can sort of parlay this into, season whatever on Big Brother or whatever.
Yeah.
But that time we were just like terrified. And plus, we had been out here for a while, and we wanted to be screenwriters and filmmakers, and we wanted to have a career past this. We never saw this as like the pinnacle. This was a stepping stone. This was our break. That's all it was.
It's a shame that didn't work out for you.
It didn't, to a certain extent, in that So we had the episode where we were just too busy to work on the movie, fiction, and we were taking meetings all about town, somewhat fiction. There's like 3. You could tell that people who were taking meetings
given to make you guys were asked to do it, or you chose to put it on.
Oh, we had finished our draft. Everything was done. And so, hey, Trevor, our manager then, and to this day, through thick and thin, set up some meetings because now we wanted to get the agent, the manager combo that would work. Trevor being our brick and mortar, who's going to be the agent that plays ball. Well, we found out pretty quickly most of these meetings were people who just wanted to be on the show. So the first question was, will the cameras be there? And they're like, oh, yes, we'd love to meet with them about representation. But we ended up going with a pretty cool agency, and was it 7-8 weeks before Feast was released, they dumped us. And we're like, oh, it's all over.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, one of the agents who really didn't give 2 rips about the reality show component swept in, and that was awesome. That was a life-changing moment. And then he was there at our doggone party with this Feast showing, and it was awesome. I mean, like, yeah, so it wasn't an easy step up. It was like, wow, if anything, now you're the contest winner. What else you got? Like, oof, it just got harder.
How long were you guys a writing team before Feast? How many years?
Never. That was the first thing we did.
Yeah, well, I mean,
but just writing together.
Yeah, how long had you guys been working together?
First weekend was Halloween weekend 1999. I remember I stacked up AC/DC CDs for you kids. A CD.
Yes. Hey, Rob has one right in front of him.
You mean like this mixed Halloween CD that I brought from you, Marcus? Boom.
Thank you.
Rob still hands out CDs every Halloween and on his birthday.
Listeners already gave Patrick his. Don't worry.
It's
I'm
awesome.
playing favorites.
But Feast was the first thing we wrote together. We wrote Feast, and then that was it.
So how did you guys meet originally?
Iowa, University of Iowa.
Wow. Are you both from Iowa?
No,
We just both went to college there. We're both from Illinois. He from
Illinois kids who don't get into Illinois go to Iowa.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And end up in Hollywood, all of you. Great plug.
Well, I don't mean to harp on Feast so much because I know you guys have talked about this movie to death at this point, but I, unlike Errol...
Let's talk about Feast 2 then.
I'll get to my feelings about that. Unlike Elric, I never saw Project Greenlight. I didn't know about it at all. For me,
You didn't
it was...
get Bravo? They didn't?
No, I did not get Bravo. For me, I was out of Fangoria Weekend of Horrors. I think Judah Freelander was there on the East Coast. They showed the opening 5 minutes of the movie. I thought it was the most badass thing I'd seen since like Evil Dead 2. With all the character introduction, I was like, holy shit, what is this?
Was that our first one at Secaucus?
I believe so.
I was at that one as well.
Secaucus, New Jersey.
This is a beautiful downtown Secaucus.
But no, I mean, I was blown away just by the frenetic energy of it, the way that you introduce the characters and promise that they'll die in 80 minutes or whatever, whatever the stats were and all that. And I even remember when the DVD came out, it was one of those rare things where I went to go see it playing at the one theater that it played it in New York City. And that day, like I saw it that midnight screening. I was so pumped. And then the next day I got the review copy of it on DVD. It was like the first time ever, like within a day, I saw a movie and I got the DVD the next day, which was awesome.
Did you get the unrated edition?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay.
I even remember bringing it to the next Fangoria Weekend of Horrors and showing it to Adam Green and Will Barrett. And same thing, first 5 minutes. Adam Green's first thing was like, oh, that's a Skid Row song right there.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. But my point being is, for me, I approached it not from the reality show as just an awesome kind of energetic Sam Raimi style movie. Where the hell did this thing come from? I mean, do you both even have, did you both, when you initially hooked up, did you have similar aesthetics in terms of tastes and likes in horror movies, or was this something you guys wanted to see?
Yeah, well, we both had interestingly similar benchmarks growing up. And by the time Iowa happened, it was the helix of everything kind of coming together. We were both projectionists at different theaters in Iowa City, Iowa. We were both in fake tuxedos. We were both loving that That's For Entertainment had that odd and weird section, and it was who'd seen the most in the odd and weird section.
So wait, you were projectionists and they made you wear...
Fake tuxedo. We wanted to wear the real thing.
What happened?
Fake tuxedo.
So I worked at theater like my entire way through college when I wasn't at a video store. He was up in a booth, man. Why'd they make you wear suits?
Well, we did everything. You'd be an usher, you'd sell popcorn, then you have to go up to be the projectionist.
Okay.
But what happened was, so I worked at the Grand Theater, it was called the Englert, and it was the big Palace Theater, and he worked at the Mall Theater. And
You're at the cinema
So that was such
6.
contempt.
it was definitely a little bit, And so what happened was one of the kids at the mall theater, you were supposed to wear like a shirt and tie, and then one time one of the kids over there, they didn't wear what they were supposed to wear, and like the manager had been there at that point, and they like came down hard, so it's like everyone's gonna have to wear a uniform now. And we're like, those motherfuckers over at that theater, So now we had to wear these ridiculous tux. So you had some dignity, and then it was all taken away.
Wow. Okay. I worked at the art
So you're
house
prepped
theater.
for Hollywood. You're perfect.
Anything outside of your pajamas,
Yeah.
if you wanted to sit up in the booth in the pajamas, I don't think anyone would have cared. But that was
Well, we had to do both. So you do usher, then you go ahead and run upstairs and run the flatbed.
I mean, it was so cool, though. Like, I remember they had a lined rubber trash can filled with all the trailers, and sometimes they'd ship them back in bulk, but 35 millimeter prints of the Independence Day teaser underneath all these seminal moments in 2.5 to 3 minute glory that would accompany film prints. Like, man, it was great. It was a hell of a way to go to school while going to school.
Yeah.
And what, did you guys have a mixer or something? A cocktail party where you met? Or how did two projectionists who were both in booths meet?
We both also ended up through that. Like, all right, if the Palace Theater, they had Twister and Independence Day, so they'd run out of popcorn. So the mall theater would run bags over. And then after a while, I was like, hey, dude. And
And then I came out in 97, and then he somehow knew I was coming out too, and then he came out in 99. So it was like he knew I was out here, and so he came out and...
Oh, sorry, out to LA. Sorry,
Yeah.
could have been misconstrued.
Oh.
But I'm happy for you both. I really am. I mean, you're a great couple.
thank you.
It's like when Marcus always introduces, this is my partner. And
Yeah, I'm sure rumors are already right. Yeah. So you came out here first, LA?
Yeah, he did.
Oh,
Yes.
you came out first.
What did
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys do when you first got out here?
Suffered.
I'm always intrigued by this question because everybody's like, I worked at the UPS store, or has these like I was a Subway sandwich artist. I love the answers.
I always wanted to stay. I was like, I'm not going to take a good job and try to do the film thing at the same time. I always tried to stay in the film thing. So my first job was assistant location manager on a Joey Lawrence movie.
Oh, wow.
Called
Whoa.
Yeah.
Beat me
He was
to it.
there. He was there.
Did he do that out of character?
You were like not supposed to do that around him.
Don't look at him in the eye.
And don't say whoa.
And don't say
don't
what.
do that. Don't do that. And so that was I didn't know LA. There was no like phones A, and there was no maps on phones B. So you had the Thomas Guide, and I was the assistant location manager, which means I'm supposed to know the locations, and I had no clue. They'd be like, oh, go find a hotel room thing. And so I had to go to all the like the transient places downtown LA and go to all these weird, creepy rooms that you're not allowed to get into. And this is me at 22, I guess. And that was my sort of introduction to the city.
We're glad
pretty
you're
cool,
still
though. I
with
like
us.
Oh, there was some dark stuff. Like we shot at the Ambassador, and I got to go in there and got to see the spot where Kennedy was shot, and was actually shot and then dragged to. He was dragged to the spot where the memorial was, but he was shot in a different spot. And so like I got all these weird, crazy. I saw the Rudy Valentino room at the I think it's Alexandria Hotel, and it was all like red shag the entire room. Just weird stuff like that. And and this is before the gentrification of downtown. This is when downtown
it meant something.
No one was ever
It meant something to shoot that.
Yeah, so that was my first job, and then Marcus came out, and
I had some
you
doozies.
didn't. Well, you had some money saved up, so you didn't work. You just ate pizza a lot.
I ate a lot of pizza. I was Leif Garrett's stand-in, a.k.a. PA, on a movie. I don't know if you can still find it, called The Art of the Bullet.
Wow.
So I was standing by this bag of chips, and they were really paying a lot of attention to the chips as the stand-in. I was like, I was like, I don't know. I was like, is it really? Like, I guess this is what you do. And then they had me step aside, and then stepped Leif, and I didn't realize that. And I don't know if he was told either how many squibs he'd been rigged with. The rest of them were in the chips. So then it's like, boom, 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 and he flies back. He's like, what the beep? Like,
Whoa, that's cool.
He's going to get a little dangerous, I guess.
Wow.
Tell us about your time at Blockbuster.
I also worked at Blockbuster Home Video before I wanted to, just get in on the ground floor of the entertainment.
In LA? Not just
Woodland
any.
Hills.
Yeah. Remember that one? That was the
Woodland Hills.
Topanga Canyon's flagship.
That was a big store.
Was
that
a
was
flagship.
like very serious.
Some interesting people that came in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most interesting thing was restocking Project Greenlight, and then being handed the secret screening passes because they did the advanced test screening for Battle of Shaker Heights up the block at a little kind of Pueblo-shaped theater in Calabasas. 3 memories, like, okay, there'd be the occasional celebrity, but often I didn't quite know who they were necessarily because there were a lot of rockers or musicians that would come in, and then you really get to know kind of who those folks are, and they're all really cool. They just want something new that's good, or something old they haven't seen that's survived the test of time.
Marcus had his own section.
I did.
Oh, did they give you like an employee section?
I did, yeah.
That's cool.
It was serious. Do you
was.
remember how serious it was? Like the video stores? Like,
No,
the
one that I worked at, that was everything. Because people would come in and they'd like judge you based on what you have there. It's like, it was a careful selection.
I had one at Tower Records in Massapequa in Long Island, New York, which is how I met Mike C., the guy that I created Icons of Fright with. Before we knew each other, he came in and he saw my rack and he's like, who's this guy that likes Argento's opera and, and what was that other movie? Chopper and
you like Chopper
Saints and all sorts of odd stuff on there. It's like, who is this guy?
Mine was at Mike's Music and Video in Blacksburg, Virginia. I always had Murder by Death. Was always on my shelf.
I'll shock you. I had a copy of Possession.
Get out of here.
You guys are from Illinois? Did you guys go to Facets? Facets in Chicago. It's next to DePaul. It's
Well,
like
I'm
one
from
of the
a
oldest.
small town.
Oh, okay, yeah. Anyway, that was my, and it was actually my copy of Possession because they didn't have it, so I burned it and then I put it in a case and I put it on my section. I was like, somebody's
So you
going to
had
watch
to
this
make
movie.
your own.
I was way before the
Wow.
trend, way before that movie
You're
came
all
back.
about Possession.
Anyway, very exciting stuff. So, how did you guys know you were both going to write together at a certain point, like of getting to know each other? Because you don't never know. Collaboration with writing doesn't always work. Just because you're friends, it takes a certain temperament.
Well, I think, based on that shared sort of life experience in certain regards, we both quickly discovered we both kind of liked the same fringe movies, and we're like, huh. And if we were trying to chase a trend, nothing would have worked. But we were like, no, we were trying to chase what we liked. And so, therefore, it was a combination of the Three Kings character intro technique, but we have to stick it in one location because that's probably more likely to be made than something that is, huge and big and takes place in the Emerald City. And then, we should be about creatures. We know a lot about creatures. Haven't seen a new one in a while. But what if, what if they were a little more anatomically correct than the average creature depicted? Not a zipper, but something that requires one.
It was supposed to be $1 million. Like we had been out here for a while. We're frustrated with things, and keep in mind, it was a weird time for horror. Then it was like post Scream, pre J horror, and it was like Valentine. That was like a money movie in there, and so we. Creature features weren't Eight-Legged Freaks was kind of like an attempt at that time, but so we wanted to make $1 million movie, one location, limited characters, but of course, like that when Feast won, it got budgeted at $25 million.
Oh my god!
by Dimension, they're like there were like 50 something. Like Feast got made because we had no clue what we were doing. Like you were like, oh, the opening was so neat with the character description. Like we put every idea we had for 20. I guess how old when we wrote it? 25 years or 24, however old we were. It was every idea we've ever had to go into that movie, and it was just like the original script was so ridiculous. We had this opening with girls, brownies that were on they're trying to get some their agricultural badges, and so they were in the cave, and they're the ones who unleashed the creatures.
That's funny.
And actually,
that's actually kind of funny that they would be the ones.
And so that was our open. That alone was like $1 million. And it was and then they're like, oh yeah, there's gonna be this bar, and then there's this one guy. Oh, we didn't know. We had so many characters. We had this elderly couple that just because we wanted the old man to say. It was some about the I don't buy green, or I don't buy green bananas.
Yeah, so that ended up being a descriptor for Clue's character.
Right.
Yeah, special skill, doesn't buy green bananas.
Pretty much every character was combined with 3 other charters at the end of the day.
Who gave the note to say one location? Where did that come from?
Well, that was us. That was we said let's put it in one location. and just because that seemed more manageable for a horror movie. And so that's what that came from. And that, I guess, that's kind of stayed for the most part. We had a original draft. We had a longer ending where they got out and they kind of so they got out. They were running somewhere, and then there was an eclipse of the sun, and like that meant something. That was the payoff. Blah blah blah. So it's like we had taken every single idea in 3 other movies we'd seen earlier in that week and put it put it into that movie. And that like I think a lot of people were pissed off when we won because like everyone's like, "What? This is a ridiculous big giant movie. How did this win?" Like we were writing within the what the rules are supposed to be, and so.
Well, I know why one didn't make it. So one of the tests that was off screen was, how do they take notes? Will they take notes? So we were wizened enough by that point as if you're given 20 notes, you do 21. Yeah. And there was this other script, really damn good. And when he was given his, 15, 16, 18 notes, he responded in kind with a request for justifying each note from the panel that was choosing.
And that was it.
And never saw him again.
Wow.
Did anyone from the other scripts that you read in your year, have any of them, have you heard of any people again? Have anyone popped up again, or is it?
No.
Yeah, one or two, like we kind of kept track of to be like, I wonder whatever happened with that one. Yeah. That one was really cool because to advance, you'd have to review 3 of the other scripts, and your reviews were reviewed. Meaning, like, if you were just going to try to can any competition, that was a mark against yourself.
That's cool. That's actually a smart idea.
Yeah. So it was really nice and diverse. I remember we read an adventure, we read a dirty comedy, and we read a scary movie. And so I was like, wow, there's some good stuff here. I mean, every one of them had some remarkable quality to it because by that point they had already cut off the fat from 1,000 to 150 to 50 or so, and then it was like really dialing in. That was intense.
Yeah, right. We won just because of Bob Weinstein. Like you saw the show. None of those guys wanted to do that movie. It was Bob Weinstein. He said, "No, we're making this movie. It's my money," and that was that. And Nick Phillips, Bob Weinstein, Andrew Rona. That's why. Yeah. Eli Holtzman, like that was it. Those other guys were like not interested at all.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, I mean, that's plenty on Project Greenlight, but if you haven't seen it, you really should watch this. It doesn't matter the timing if you know the outcome. It's just interesting to whether it's even if it's heightened to people. I felt like we won. Like I felt like our kind won. When the movie finally shows, I feel like we win. Yeah.
Most of the people didn't quite understand it when they'd read it. Like, is this supposed to be like funny or is it scary? And we had that at that. This is like early 20s when you're in a apartment with there's a lot of people, front of our friends. No one's making any money, and you're just sitting around watching movies, and you end up watching really weird movies. And so that's sort of where we were. And so we put all that stuff into it. And for someone who is not into that, it's going to come off as childish or stupid or just didn't really track. And so. But once we talked to people, it's kind of like this and this, then like Andrew Rona was one, he just didn't get it. Like he didn't quite get it. And then like I think Nick Phillips was like, well, do you remember Tremors? I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. And then, okay. And then he kind of, okay, no, I get it. That
probably is the closest thing I can think, actually. Tremors, sure. That's pretty good.
And we even cut together our own little Rip-O-Matic for a trailer and used a lot of sound bites from Demon Knight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because it being the siege.
Sure. Yeah, it had a wry sensibility of people going, like, is anyone going to save us? Nope.
Yeah. We had a few of them deep, was it Deep Rising, remember?
Yes.
Yeah. I love that movie.
That was a good movie.
That's her. That's her jam.
That was a good movie.
Bekah's all about that.
Steven Sommers.
That's his best movie. That is
probably. You say that like that's a massive accomplishment. I'm sorry.
And he gets hair, and that's about it for me. Musical hair, he's got a wonderful in. So, yeah.
Well, I was just watching. It was supposed to be right. I didn't see the Odd Thomas. I thought that was supposed to be right.
Oh, I haven't seen
it. It's not bad. I mean, it's not the book
right.
Because I read the book and then I was like, oh my god, there's a movie version. This is going to be awesome. But it's not bad.
And who played the Maori pirate?
Timora Morrison, probably. It's only him and Cliff Curtis. There's only two working actors. that was actually, I forgot to talk about, Cliff Curtis, who's in the Walking Dead spinoff that just finished. But the last episode was actually half decent and made up for the previous 5. So
great.
Maybe we'll get good next
We've
year.
had the question on the show before, and it's kind of this hypothetical question that we get from fans a lot. If you could remake one movie, what would it be? I've had a script for Deep Rising ready for about 10 years now.
What's on that island?
Yeah, no, like remaking Deep Rising, like, just kind of a modernization of it. So when anybody is ready to go with Deep Rising.
Is that the one with the toilet gag where the person gets pulled into the toilet?
Yes.
Because there was a few aquatic horrors right around there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Virus.
Again, it was a weird time.
I like Virus, too.
No,
but
Virus is bad. I
go
didn't like Virus.
Deep Space Nine or something?
Deep Space Nine? No, that was...
Deep Star 6.
Deep Star 6.
Yes,
That was
19
1989 was the year of the aquatic horrors.
Yeah.
It was Deep
Abyss,
Star 6,
Leviathan.
Abyss, Leviathan, and there's one more. It has Nick Nolte in it. I can't even remember the name now. But yeah.
And then later on there was the one with Sharon Stone, Dustin Hoffman, and Sphere.
That was
Crichton. That was Crichton, right?
That was like the first January release where it was like, what? Why is the...
The big star-studded. It was a clunker.
I think it defined
was
the
it Barry
January
Sonnenfeld? It was somebody weird.
Sonnenfeld.
Like, what makes no
No,
sense.
Barry Levinson.
Barry Levinson, yes, that's right. Even less sense to be in an aquatic horror movie,
No, I have to look up
so
which one's
bizarre.
Nick
Very
Nolte
big,
in it. It's
expensive
going to drive
movie.
me
Yeah.
crazy.
Now, when Bekah brought that up, Patrick seemed like he wanted to reply about the remake question. Is there something you guys would
What
remake?
have you guys always wanted to remake?
I mean, not ones that we've made?
No, nothing that you've made. No, like one film from throughout history, like, I've just always wanted to redo Plan 9 or whatever the hell it is.
Outside of Steel Magnolias, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Obviously.
Man, I want to keep going. Last of the Dogmen.
Wow, I've never even seen
I've
one.
never even heard of this movie.
It's
this
just
genre,
cool.
or-
Barbara Hershey and
I love Barbara Hershey.
Tom Berenger, and it is.
I love both of them. Yeah, I haven't seen that.
It's just like, if you ever just read Roger Ebert's review of it, and it's a marvelous review. He's like, this is such a great idea, but just a few little things were handled a little maybe bit odd, and it's got just such a marvelous secret about it.
You had the Nolte movie?
I do, and it was not part of the 1989 grouping. It is from about 10 years prior. It's called The Deep.
Oh, yeah, The Deep.
The Deep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just remember all those covers next to each other.
Yeah, that's why.
You can see them all on the
Deep cover looks almost identical to the Deep Star 6
Yeah, that's
cover,
right.
and that's why I was like, it's there.
Leviathan.
It's all in my brain.
The Leviathan's the one with Peter
Weller.
Weller, so that's all.
For some reason, at some point, I needed to see Deep Star 6 like right at that moment. So it is the one movie that I have on Amazon Prime that I bought. So every time I open up Amazon Prime,
Sitting there.
it's just sitting there
And mocking you.
And you forget how effects have advanced over the past few years.
They
Like,
are.
that was not a great movie.
If commercial,
It had its moments.
I'm curious.
I remember the
Miguel
end.
Ferrer.
Yeah.
When
which one's he? Deep
He's
Star?
the one he raises too quick.
Yeah.
Gets a bit of the lethal bends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
his blood starts shooting out everywhere.
Yeah,
And then-
I don't
It's
know if
fun.
that actually happens, but I fear it every
does in
time I
movies.
think about it.
Instead of
It probably does.
I would assume, I would think so. Maybe that does happen. But then again, I'm like, I thought you just got like nitrogen bubbles,
Yeah,
and then
and
like
just
you had a
kinda, like,
stroke, and that was it, and
yeah.
you're just dead. I don't know if you explode, but maybe if you're coming up from that low, I mean, they were like in a trench or some jazz.
It's
so.
true.
I'm going to go ahead and leverage that Deep Star 6 knows more than anyone ever about science.
Well, it's undoing is when it goes to the exterior shot and they're in the water and they're clearly in the producer's pool and you're like, come on, those are rough. Like, come on, guys. Like, I know it. Like, they're just saying, in Jaws, we just shot. Yeah, I know it worked in Jaws. They shot in the guy's pool, but. Here we are.
Deep
But
Star
that's Spielberg's
6.
pool.
I remember
Yeah.
that was one of the first
I think it was a
movies
producer's pool, actually.
I ever saw anybody naked in. And nobody remembers the nude scene from Deep Star 6, but I always say that and Revenge of the Nerds taught me what bodies are supposed to look like because there's this scene.
Yeah.
Well, there's
Revenge of
lots
the
them.
Nerds is like
That's
Bush.
unreal.
There's like
We got
full-
Bush.
yeah.
Like how did
we
what
see it though, or
happened?
did we just hear
No,
them
you
say
saw
it?
it.
see it.
You saw
It's
it.
like close
Weird.
up.
I don't have any memory of seeing it.
80s Bush.
Yeah.
And it
Revenge of the
we
Nerds
got
changed my
Bush.
life.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break to go look at Bush. And when we come back, actually, we're not coming back from Bush. We're just going to be gone for 3. I had a question about because you guys have done a lot of sequels and a lot of big franchise stuff. Do you guys still do specs of things like let's say commercially, making a living and commerciality wasn't a factor? Are there like little weird, like you're talking about with Feast, spec scripts like that you guys still are really excited about writing when you get together?
The only thing we're interested in is things with numbers after them.
That's bling. You're so like John Gallagher.
We're into part 3s. Anything else, not so much.
So when we do write original specs, we actually make it the sequel.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, the first one must have done
Leonard
well.
Six.
Yeah.
We were so envious when that movie 2012 came out. It was like, ooh, that's a good sequel. Oh, no, there wasn't.
Because I imagine you can't have that much time for that when you're going from writing assignment to writing assignment.
Well, I mean...
But you can make time.
Yeah.
If there's just an idea that wants to crawl out, then sure. I mean, as long as it doesn't get into the way of, the current obligations, then those ideas can percolate and, reach back into childhood a little bit and see like, because I for all the naivete we had, that it was crucial to breaking through as well. I mean, you can't invent what you want. And that first script came from just us wanting to see something. Yeah. Like, we wanted to see this and that and that. And it was a bunch of elbows and bumper stickers and wild gore. But hey, that's why I loved Evil Dead 2. Because it was a movie that just seemed to stand up with just a taller shadow than everything else. It was relentlessly original, even though it was a part 2.
Well, they've been burning. I was just talking at the start of the show about Sam and Bruce did a thing at the Beyond Fest this weekend. Seeing them together talking was like seeing two 10-year-olds who just reunited and are talking like you could just see them almost like a time machine. And I think it's that same thing. I think they just took all the lessons they learned from the first one and go, oh yeah, let's do the things that we learned and wanted to improve on. And so I thought it was pretty amazing. That's really cool.
I watched it last night again.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it in over 10, 12 years. And just that last half an hour where it's pretty much just him facing the worst in his friends, like, whoa. It's even that first one, it still had so much manic energy and it is an accomplishment.
See, I saw the first one like a dozen times before I saw the sequel.
Yeah.
And so it was weird seeing the sequel because I had like sort of really gravitated towards and really loved the first one. And that was a different time. Like that was the 80s.
Video stores.
When video stores and like I don't know if you remember, there were certain movies and you would just get over and over and over again at that age. Like now I can watch one movie and it's hard for me to ever watch anything again.
Yeah.
But like then it was like that, The Brood, like Chud, like all these weird little movies that are
not Chud 2.
Never Chud 2. Chud, like that was
Chud's
a constant rental for me. Where my mom was like, "Why do we keep renting Chud?" And I'm like, "It's Chud. They're Chud."
Catch
and it's like the pencil and the ankle, and for Evil Dead when she stabbed her in the ankle, like just little things like that.
That's still the audience. It killed at this audience. You could just see everyone go, "Oh!" at that moment. Sure. This is like 30 years later or whatever.
So the Evil Dead scared you. It was a scary movie to you.
The first one was scary. The first one was totally scary, and also you're watching something with no frame of reference or
pop culture. There's nothing around it.
There's nothing. Someone just turns it on, and it's completely new to you in every regard, and you're blown away by it. Like I just remember that feeling. Like, it took me three. And I said this before. It took me 3 times to watch Halloween, and I just couldn't get through it, and it felt just so real. To me, Texas Chainsaw. I thought that was like a snuff film. Which I didn't even know what a snuff film meant. But in seeing that, it's like, what? Why is this guy cutting his hand? Like, what? This is like, what is going on here? And you don't recognize any of the actors, and it's like really grainy and dirty. It feels like some home video. This is before video. This is when all your movie on the Super 8 looked the same as this movie I'm watching on TV right now, and it was just so affecting at that point.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't go online and look it up and, here's what it is and blah, blah, blah. It was just like some older brother was like, let's fuck with these kids. And and I was pretty young when I first started seeing these. It was over at Jonathan Rao's house, and his older brother, Jason Rao, would like show us these crazy movies, and the parents didn't care what we watched. And the video store, which was Video Adventure in Evanston on Central Street, had a very loose policy of renting R-rated movies.
God bless those.
Yeah, I know, right? And it was like, I was seeing stuff that was shocking. Because I have kids now, and I can't believe the stuff I saw at that age, I can imagine my kids seeing that. Like, I mean, I was still watching Face the Death, like really all the hardest stuff you could get. Cannibal Holocaust. Like,
have your kids seen anything you've worked on yet? Obviously, the Highlander
What are
movie.
your kids?
The oldest is 8, about to be 9.
Pacific Rim?
They've seen Pacific Rim. Trying to think of anything else.
Which I don't want to delve too much, but I did want to, since you mentioned it, you guys did some uncredited writing work on it.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, because obviously Del Toro's,
Oh, it was visiting the North Pole. It was amazing because his childhood.
So it was cold. There was no food, and there were polar bears. They were big.
I mean, like
fight or flight.
That relationship to a T was I had my shoes were still sticking to the floor from fake blood from some insert pickups we were doing, and hop on the next plane I can to get up to Canada, and the elevator doors open up, and he's there with a big smile and a hug and helps with the luggage. And you're like,
Wow.
okay. So this is different.
How did he select you guys? What project was it that made you?
Well, so what happened? So they were a month away from shooting, and he was just, he had a million things to do, and he needed some like-minded people to come in and help him just do stuff that other people, producers wanted certain things done. And so it happened. We were working with a producer named Mary Parent, who we were working on like The Outer Limits with her, and so. We got along real good, and then one day we just got a call and said, "Hey, do you guys want to can you come up to Toronto and help Guillermo with Pacific Rim?" And we were like, "Well, yeah, of course." And so so they gave us the script, and we read it on the plane. I had to go up early because Marcus was shooting inserts on the collection, and gave us a script, read on the plane, landed, had dinner with Mary, sort of went through some of the stuff. Heard the notes from the studios, what they wanted to be done. And then it was Canadian Thanksgiving that Monday. There is a Canadian Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so no one was...
I don't know why I laughed. I just like...
It's
really no
They're
context to
thankful
laugh.
for Canada.
I think it's just Canadians. It just makes me laugh,
And it was... so it was Monday. It was Guillermo and Mary and me. And Marcus was coming up the next day, and he was like, sat down, and it's weird because now how you see pictures of everyone and you almost feel like you know them, and then he sits down in his office, and I'm like, there's Guillermo del Toro right in front of me, and he's looking at my face, and he's talking to me, and he was like, what do you think of this script? And then we just focused on sort of the opening a little bit, and we had some ideas, and he was like, okay, go do it. And so I had to go out, sit at his assistant's desk and write this scene that I just described. And I put in a headset and I wrote it, and he was in his office and Mary was in her office. And then, like an hour or so later, I gave him the scene, and he reads it and goes, okay, you can stay. And then so that was good.
Yeah.
And then Marcus came up the next day, and
Actually, it was that afternoon because you had done it, and you looked you looked like you'd been through an emotional car wash.
Right, that Monday. Yeah, because I came Sunday, you came Monday, and then we were there until production started, and we were just helping him. So like there would be some note, and all three of us would go in and we'd talk about it, and Mary would be there too, and he'd be like, okay, go do it, and we go do it, and he'd deal with his other duties, and we give it back to him, and then he would rewrite it from there, and then that was just how it went. And then we did that for a month, and it was probably the best creative experience we've had. It was amazing.
Wow.
It could not be, like what is being depicted on Project Greenlight, like with chaos, and like no, it was an exuberance. If anything, you're just trying to harvest and do some forensics to other drafts by marvelous writers, and just like really coming up with the best version of all these wonderful ideas that he'd cultivated.
Well, and what's interesting too, like when you meet, because you guys have met a lot of people, when you meet the sort of like highest of successful people, they're often the nicest people you've ever met, and you can't believe how nice they are. Like he is just such a nice, just collaborative, upbeat, like just a positive spirit. And so that's why it was fun, and it was just a fun place to be. And but it was interesting because we had the same problems we had on a $5 million movie as we had on this $200 million movie. So it's like there was dialogue you can play with, but he was like, you move this, it's 10 million. You move this, it's 10 cents. You know, so it's like, so it's like you still have the same problems. Like there's just certain things that couldn't do, or you know, had already, because that movie was such a big thing, and they already had to do a lot of like pre-vids type
Did you ever
stuff.
read his the one that didn't happen, the Lovecraft on the at the
Mouth
foot?
of
Yeah, the
Madness
foot.
or foot.
At the Mountains of Madness.
This was right after, so we didn't want to ask about that.
No, I was just curious because I heard one of the best interviews I've ever heard on the radio was the NPR one with him, and it was long, but he was talking about the process of that, and it just sounded fascinating. You know, his idea of shooting it two ways: one the hard R-rated, and then the other one so it could play in multiplex, but also play, you know, in Tom Cruise. I don't know. It's just one of those great interviews where you saw the guy's mind thinking 2 steps ahead of the people who are going to get in his way.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Which I thought was interesting.
I
Like he
was
had learned a lot.
so excited about that
Of
when
course,
I heard
I
about
mean-
it. It was just like my favorite director doing my favorite author.
I mean, cool.
Then it fell apart.
The good news is he has a big movie about to come out, so yay.
Yeah.
You know, it's cool to see a big, and it looks big, you know.
Yes, it does.
It
Absolutely
looks fun, yeah.
And you can tell like he's got quite the fan base of these marvelous actors going along for the ride.
Yeah.
It's a testament to his heart. And it's not. He doesn't hide it from anyone. It's
Yeah.
big and it's welcoming.
It reminded me of like of when we haven't really had a big budget horror movie since like Coppola's Dracula, which was 20 something years ago,
Yeah.
right?
1992.
Was it 92?
It was in the 1900s.
And you forget actually how that, I don't know if you guys liked it.
Oh, I like that movie a
I love
lot.
it.
It's a
Big
really
fan.
good movie.
Yeah.
Like you forget how, and even going back to it and seeing how,
Because his practical effects, the way he shot effects, is
Camera stuff.
fascinating. I'd
That's
love to see a
great.
good article on that on your website. On Bloom, like a real good breakdown of
Why
how
don't you write it?
He just
Yeah,
Well,
she prints my
Don't-
society one.
Don't pitch shit, just do it.
In the new
It must be in the
Entertainment
making of, yeah.
Weekly, right? They have that. It's just a one-pager, but in the new Entertainment Weekly, there's a whole thing about how, I had all these top-tier effects guys telling me I couldn't do it the way I wanted, so I
He did
fired
it.
him and hired my son.
Yeah, his son we just
Did it
worked
all
through the
again.
whole thing. So EW beat us to it. Oh well, I'll
But
read
it's
it.
just it's a paragraph, but
Okay.
it's like, they summarize it with, it was filming practical stage magic.
Yeah.
So the green mist was the only shot they really broke down where, shot the doors opening, and then took the film out, rewound it, put it in the fridge for a week, figured out how to do mist, put the film back in, cranked it up to the same frame,
That's
and
awesome.
shot the mist. So it's an organic special effect.
He already
That's
won when he cast Tom Waits as Renfield. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
that
but
was
you
definitely,
got it. You're
that
done.
was a baller move, and it
Yeah, it
went
was.
great. It got so much fan crowd.
Keanu.
but there was so much focus on like Keanu Reeves
Yeah.
and Winona Ryder that you sort of got
Well,
lost.
no,
in
it was
that,
perfectly
and you
cast,
realized-
but Keanu, he's
just
still a little
balance.
off, but whatever. It's,
Yeah.
Gary Oldman's so freaking good that
Yeah,
it makes
he
up.
is.
And when he's a beast, it's so great when he's a beast.
Yeah.
The scenes with her and the red and the sexual elements of that.
Yeah.
You forget about that part of Dracula that he can do
Well,
that.
and
Yeah.
Crimson Peak reminds me of that.
Cool.
Like, I haven't seen anything like that. Since then,
And it's romantic tradition,
Yeah.
gothic.
I'm honestly worried it's going to be overly CG'd. I'm hoping.
That's my worry too, but I have confidence.
I
and
watch
hope.
it and it reminds me of like Woman in Black, which I really liked that movie. It was
Yeah.
just, it didn't scare me. Like I enjoyed
Yeah.
watching it. It just didn't scare me because I was like, oh, look, it's a CG ghost. But I enjoyed watching it still. I'm scared that this is how Crimson Peak's going to be, where I'm like, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love watching this. I am not scared in the least.
Yeah.
Well,
I've heard
worry.
it's,
The word worry. Did you ever? Robert Downey Jr. tweeted that great definition of worry. Worry is investing in a future you don't want to happen. Like, I think that movie's going to come clobber us, and we're going to love it.
Yeah.
Stephen King's tweet, however many months ago, was like, "Wow." You're like, "Okay, I'm in."
How soon is that? It's really soon, right?
It's like next weekend.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm
is it
seeing
the 23rd or the
And you guys
16th?
promised that we would get Guillermo in a couple weeks, right? Like you
guys,
guaranteed
guys.
us.
You
If
said
you
you were
came
gonna
on the
bring him along
show,
tonight.
you would bring.
We brought the mansion in the parking lot. I just want to.
I will show you his Hobbit if you bring him on. I've got the rough cut. It's a secret thing from New Zealand that only I have. Okay. But speaking of franchises, because you guys did a bunch of them, what's your favorite Saw movie?
Yeah.
Curious minds want to know. Favorite Saw movie? Go.
Well, I mean, the ones that we did?
No,
or-
just favorite Saw movie.
Well, first one.
Okay. I like the second one still. I don't know why. Don't know what
Well,
it
the
is.
second one
It's more
is
trappy.
pretty crazy.
I like it as an idea, as a story. It's just interesting. It's like,
Well, it was interesting because, I mean, you have to take yourself back to that time and how it was such a big thing. And I remember like learning, like you'd get little bits. And then I remember when I heard, it's always the time thing, right? And so the time thing on the third one was like a woman who has this device around her neck, and it's got a shotgun device around her neck, and it's connected to Kramer's heart monitor, and she has to save him. And I was like, well, that's pretty genius. Like that was a pretty genius one. But I remember there was the second one was like, well, now it's a group game and they're in the house, and that was the big thing. Yeah.
So which of the films do you think changed the trajectory the most? Was it the second? The second that really put it on? Because then the others feel way more connected though after the second. It feels like 3, 4, 5, 6. It all feels connected.
That was
story-wise.
The first one was definitely more like I'll call it kind of character relations of who's this guy and how am I related to you and what did we do type stuff. But it wasn't as trap-esque except for the one device. Like in the actual room where they were, there were no like traps exactly.
Yeah. Well, I would say part 2 is what is really,
defined it.
The torture porn subgenre. The first one's not at all.
No.
If there was never any sequels, it would just be in the mystery thriller section.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be a thriller. It was supposed to be Silence of the Lambs. That's what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, even those close-ups of the intestines and whatnot, those were pickups.
Yeah.
They're like, we want to push it a little more towards
that was
horror.
the only thing is like the digging into the stomach thing.
So
That's
it's
the
all
only thing
Balsman's
that's even
fault. That's what we're saying?
Yeah.
No. Well, that script was an original of his.
Yeah.
Let's
and
put
it wasn't
in
Saw. It was like just something that became Saw 2 eventually.
Yeah.
And
so
yet,
coming into that franchise, I mean, were you guys watching those as fans and then thinking, like, oh shit, well, how do we do
Yes.
this?
Absolutely.
I remember seeing the first. I think we were working on Feast. Yeah, at the time we were working on Feast when that first trailer came out.
the Not Safe for Work teaser I saw when we were reading the other scripts and writing our reviews.
Okay.
The teasers all had
how fucked up
is that? Where they show you a trap scenario. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was the guy in I can't think of his name, but in the room he had to get out of the room with the barbed wire.
Yeah, right.
That was actually one of the producer's friends. He was a hockey player. And they played hockey together, and they needed a big guy, and there he was. And so I should know what that character's name is because we brought him back for a moment. I think it was Saw 6, maybe. Was it Saw 6? He was with the prostitute from
that's
Saw
right.
2.
Yeah, in 6 where you guys
we
pulled it all
go
together.
so deep in like I forget so much stuff. Like, but there was a moment where we were like deep into like connecting this whole thing. And
I think it shows that those ones are super connected, but they come out so quick. How hard is that?
You talk like
year turnaround.
That's where Lee and James and they're like, they're not supposed to be connected. And we're like, well, we connected everything, guys.
Didn't you guys shoot 2 of them like back to back, like one wrapped, and they had you guys shooting the other one within a couple of months?
Well, you'd have a development process that was almost year-round for a little bit there, but the shooting, there was always enough time to react to that opening weekend and what reviews are like, hey, this works, hey, this was confusing, hey, so you could ride the line a little bit.
The latest shooting one was like the third one shot, I feel like in like May, and then it came out that October, number 3, and that was because of Greg Hoffman's death, and so that sort of slowed it down, but then we were shooting 4 right around, I think it was like January, February. Once we started doing 4, 5, 6, and 7, it got on a bit more of on a normal schedule. But the first 2 was great. Like the first one, no one thought it was going to be a hit at all.
Yeah.
And then it was, and then they sort of scrambled to get the second one. And like Darren's story in terms of how he got that job is crazy.
It's amazing.
I don't see how no one can do that anymore. Like that was just like, well, plus it was, Lionsgate was a bit more of a, but Lionsgate was like the Wild West, like back then.
Yeah.
And yet there's a weird trend now, like to give a guy who makes a tiny little like safety last, and then now we're going to give you safety not guaranteed. Sorry, and then now you get a Jurassic Park movie, and safety not guaranteed is small. I like South by, and I was like, oh wow, and then it just happened again last week. Somebody who made a film just like that is getting another major franchise. I can't remember which one it was, but I like that trend because it shows if you can be creative with nothing, you can create something. Which one?
The Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, that's right.
The
Yeah,
cop car,
the cop car. I think that's interesting.
But I mean, Darren had done nothing. There was like Darren was like an assistant, and he had a script, and he was like, you met Darren. Like he comes in, and he's like, "Let me tell you what's going to be." And you're like, he was like, can you imagine what a punk he was back then? Coming in, and he had to shoot something, that zombie thing he did that he shot. Did you ever see that?
I did.
And it was like,
even he says it's terrible.
Well, it's like he did the Avid speed up on it or whatever he did, like that effect that was cool for like 3 minutes. It was like, not to get to Halloween, but do you remember like there was a moment like the 90s where like Avid had just coming in and everyone was doing their credits in Avid. Have you seen? And they look so cool at the time, and they look so bad now. It's amazing.
Brian Collins will know what we're talking about. I know he's the credits expert. Was there ever talk of you directing one of these? Because I feel like your directing of the collection series seems like it would be even more advanced than a couple of the final films.
No,
kind of
weird. You never thought of leveraging it. You never leveraged a deal.
I don't think it was ever.
I thought that's how Hollywood worked, man.
We were shooting. I think like during 5, we were shooting The Collector. We just finished The Collector and went to 5, and so it wasn't like.
So it didn't time.
I wrapped on that, and the next day got on a plane to do the week of punch-ups.
I think right, on 5, and then so the collection was well after that. So that I mean, and I don't know if you remember the box office gross of The Collector, but
which was obviously enough to make a sequel.
Well, that was DVD mainly, because that was back in the DVD days when that did well on DVD, and so that's why that happened.
Are we going to tell people about The Collected or not?
If you wish,
we can talk about it.
No, is that a real thing?
We have to rip that out.
I was just making
Good
that
job,
up.
Elric. So what do you guys have coming up that you can tell us about?
Well, my goodness, we're okay. So I think one of the most interesting elements of like the back-to-back-to-back nature of the Saw series was it was inadvertently training us to take a swing at television.
Yeah.
So within this past year, we're doing just that, and so hopefully, we'll be getting a few monsters out there to scare some folks, and maybe someone will step from the dark and save them.
Very cool. It's a show at ABC. It's called Monstropolis. And
nice.
So that's what it is. And so it would be this time next year if it gets picked up and all that.
Like a horror comedy, which you guys seem.
It's a drama.
It's a drama.
It's a hour. Well, I mean, it has a lightish tone to a certain extent, but it is an hour-long drama that would be on ABC, and it's set it's called Monstropolis, and it's set in a world where monsters exist, and they're out in the open, and they're part of society, and
cool,
and that sort of
And you're not allowed to talk about it. Probably you've already overstepped your boundaries.
We have to edit that whole fucking segment now. Damn it! So The Collected.
No, I just made that up because part 2 ended in a perfect way to want to see a part 3.
I assumed that something was in the works. I didn't know.
Hey
guys, is there a part 3 coming?
Well, we actually wrote one because like right before the collection came out, it was like, well, let's be ready, just in case.
Collection was testing really well. Like it was the highest testing movie we'd ever worked on. That had been tested, and so
I was at the Scream Festival, and it's bonkers, and it's big. It feels bigger than it is.
I revisited it a few months ago, and I talked about it in the show, and I loved it more the second time because it's so fucking crazy. It's so weird.
Well,
it makes me laugh a lot, and I mean that in the best way possible.
It made me laugh, man. Like it's like we're like, really? We get
there's
like
a behind the scenes clip of you that they released right before. Where you're like, how can we eviscerate 70 people in the opening sequence?
Yes,
and like you're just so happy about it. They're like, oh yes, I got to watch that again.
And that was built, and that was real. Like it was a combine engine or a turbine or combine thresher, and that was like. What's the guy's name who built it? Is an Australian guy.
David Fletcher.
Who's like,
he's
he tells you these crazy stories. He's like, he's the only one who can like carry concealed weapons in LA County. Like he tells you these stories. And like,
so wait, he actually vaulted a thresher above the audience? Like
that was real.
It was
like it's on a track, and he built this track for it, and he built the thresher.
I just would have assumed it was CGI at the time because
like if you're harvesting an entire field of like grass, that's what you use. And
so the blades on it were soft, but they still hurt, and so
well, here's the thing: there were real blades. And so they were doing like vintage David Letterman, where they'd put fruit in front of it and then just turn it on and say, you want to say this thing really kill? And then, boom, you'd just see what it would do to melons and whatnot. Be like, wow. So then we had the real teeth for close-ups, and then rubber teeth when it was getting close to folks. But yeah, those hurt too.
Wow.
The original title, The Collector, there is a Terrence Stamp.
There's a Terrence Stamp thriller.
But for us, the idea of the entomology was, well, the first time a character from a thriller interrupts a character from a horror movie's business. And he's like, hey, no, these are my rules, not yours. And so in the second one, I was like, well, what if you took the action movie characters and they wandered into the horror guy's like really big place? And you're like, you're not breaking into my house. Like this is the horror show. But the cool thing was like, and just the strata of like factoids, that nightclub was built in the CDC of Walking Dead season 1. That was where we shot a lot.
Oh, interesting. Before it blew up as a CGI explosion.
Yes, absolutely.
A pretty bad one.
And the art on the back walls created was a marvelous artist in conjunction with Grace Walker, who is now the production designer on Walking Dead.
Yeah,
and
she's good.
let's see, what did I take?
The production design of part 2 is amazing. If you're like the collection,
yes.
The second one, in the room with the big blue, it almost Damien Hirst, like people in blue aqua.
Oh, great!
And then fire everywhere. I mean, that's all I remember is fire. Just Hotel Argento.
Everything I was getting, just crucified for later on. Thank you. And then a great artist by the name of Anthony Leonardi donated these 6-foot paintings so we could have rooms that had. Twisted people appreciate art.
Yeah.
So what would their art be? That was fun. And also to, play around without dialogue for a bit. And so you see the ending and you think like, I saw watching the ending, I'm like, well, we have a circle.
Right.
Good guy gets put in a box, close. Bad guy gets put in a box, close.
Yeah.
So it was like, to come up with a decent why to be like, why would we open that box again? One did come out. So hopefully... We'll see. But now you can't say maybe The Collected. You'd have to like reuse the first title because it's been, it'll be like 6-7 years. It'll be The Collector, but the first E will have to be backwards like a 3.
Or just
wouldn't that be
3D.
something?
And not that you're going to do any other movies in 3Ds or part 3s of anything else. Any other little movies that might be out there. But if you could reimagine one of the great horror films, are you allowed to talk about anything else that you might be working on? Subtle. It is October.
Wow, that was a heavy drop, guys.
It is October. Yeah, after all.
There is something highly personal.
Do we have to cut that now?
No, not at all. But there is something.
If I know it, it's out in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely... with regards to one of the other things is like if we are so lucky, that has to be the absolute best thing we've ever been a part of.
Yeah. It's, especially when something's been done so many times, you have to.
Yes. Yeah. Wouldn't that be cool to just feel like, wow, aha, that's been the goal.
Yeah, and that seems to be with a lot of big franchises. I know Friday the 13th.
What are you talking about?
How do everyone knows, right?
No one knows.
What?
You don't know Halloween?
What are you talking about?
You're being ambiguous about.
Yeah.
Well, because I think I'm meant to be, right?
Okay.
Someone is at home groaning right now through this whole conversation.
If I know from IMDb this.
I just thought we were going to be like, did I drink too much? What did I do?
if I'm asking these questions based on IMDb research, then everyone at home
that's totally accurate, I'm sure.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just on a message board, and I'm at the bottom of the trolls.
You know what? Actually, because it's October and it's Halloween, if you guys wouldn't mind playing this game with me a little bit.
Sure.
I actually had an idea for a piece on Blumhouse, but I'd rather just do it live right now. We might as well go across the...
Right.
Last year, Anchor Bay and Scream Factory put out the Halloween box set. All the movies collected together. And, it'd been a while. I revisit most of them, for the Halloween season. But last year when that box set came out, I watched all of them in a row. And I came to the conclusion now at this point in my life that I will never watch certain ones ever again because I am too old to some of them I'll revisit, some of them I won't. But
Paul Rudd and a baby, come on.
Hey, Paul Rudd's good in that movie.
Oh, that movie's bad. Sorry, I'm just killing you.
I thought it might be fun to just quickly go through each one and what you remember about it, what stands out about it. So obviously the original Halloween's classic. Maybe first time you saw the original Halloween, John Carpenter's movie.
The first one?
Yes.
Like what was the thing that we remember?
When because again we were talking before about Discover. You said before that was one of the movies you couldn't even make it through because of how scary it was at the time, which I think is fascinating.
Well, mine, and it's even to this day is the him at the hedges.
Yeah.
That's even, there's a certain, I jog, and so every time I jog, there's just one hedge I come to every time, and I think of it every single time. And this is how many years later still.
Yeah.
And I mean, that movie's filled with stuff like that. It's like, by the laundry, just the tracking shots of, the kid, that movie's filled with it.
Totally. That's all I remember. Totally. Every second word.
Well, there's like the very deep, like, disturbing answer. But then I remember, like, just at the most base, I oddly in this entire wall-to-wall terror experience, something about that nice man in the jacket made me feel safe as a kid. And so when the nightmares began after watching that, and there was this stoic shape just constantly bringing a knife closer and closer to my Achilles, I couldn't run away. I would be looking for that nice man in the coat.
Huh. That movie, it's interesting to go back and really dissect it, as we have, of course. And we got the script as well, and that is probably the best written horror script I have ever read.
Really?
Oh, interesting.
I'd love to read it.
You should check it out. It is so clean and just moves and so precise. And it is. I think the movie is 92 minutes and the script is 92 pages. It's
wow.
You can keep a watch by it.
Wow.
Yeah, and
there it is.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, that film.
Well, I also love there's a story that John Carpenter's told a million times about like what the importance of the actors and what they bring to it. And Donald Pleasance at the end saying, once he shoots him or whatever, he looks over and Michael's gone. Mm-hmm. And Donald said to John, now, do you want me to play this like, oh my God, he's gone, or I knew this would happen? And I think, and he gave him both versions of it, but John was like, I was a young director, I didn't know any better. Yeah. He knew that I knew this would happen. And that's, of course, the one he used. But I love that, because you can't see that on the page, but then that's the beauty of working with actors, like what they bring to a character.
Well, and plus seeing it as a young kid, and you're just kind of in the moment, and you're like, it's scary, but you're not necessarily sure why. It was in going back and looking at it was interesting to deconstruct it as proving that the boogeyman exists. That's what it was. That's what the movie was, and that's what it did. It was, there's no, there's the boogeyman. No, there's not the boogeyman. There is a boogeyman. No, there's not the boogeyman. Oh, there is the boogeyman. And that's all it is. Like, it's her realizing that there is the boogeyman, right? Yeah. And that's what it does. And that's the last line. Was that the boogeyman? I think it was. And then and that's such a clean line, right? And so, I don't want to give it anything, but like, in what we are trying to do is following that clean line.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you, in the script, is there any indication as to why he focuses on her? Because obviously the invention of it being a sibling came in the second one, but is there anything in there?
No, he sees her.
He becomes interested.
She comes to the house and he becomes infatuated by her, and then that's it. And that's how simple is that?
Isn't that weird? That's how much sequels change a mythology of something. I
always thought that was the biggest mistake of the Rob Zombie reboot, is that like that the thing that all the writers that did all the sequels admitted was like, man, Carpenter saying it was his sister in part 2 was the most problematic plot point. Mm-hmm. And if only we can get out of that. And then the first thing they do when they remake it is, oh, it's his sister still. Uh-huh. And it's like, oh, you had a chance to change it. Because I remember I did an interview with Dan Ferens, who wrote the 6th one, Curse of Michael Myers, and he's a really intelligent, sharp guy, really analyzes those movies, and just talking to him about that first movie, it was exactly that. He's like, if you forget that that it's supposed to be his sister or whatever, here's a little boy that for no reason at 6 years old killed his sister and is now fixated on that moment, whatever the sexual connotation of that moment is, and that's it. It's like, if you do something like that that's evil, you just want to relive it. You want to really experience it. And the way he pointed out is like, he just sees this girl that reminds him of his sister, and he just wants to play that moment out again. It's like a whole, when you look at that first movie and eliminate the whole sister thing, it's kind of an interesting psychological play of, the mindset of
reenactment, which is like what Ted Bundy's famous. I mean, he was always trying to reenact brunette victims of the girl who broke up with, it was always the same type. It wasn't random as you would think, It's interesting.
The University of Iowa had a pristine 35 millimeter print of Halloween that they would show to the students once a year, once every other year.
Yeah.
nothing like seeing it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's true of a lot of these classics. Hey, you see it that way, and it's just like seeing it through a whole new veil.
And that box set is so great because I didn't realize how good 3 actually looks. Because everyone saw it and experienced it on shitty VHS.
Yeah.
D&D, baby.
Yeah, and then you see it on the Blu-ray, and you're like, wow, this was an actual movie. This is just lovely looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to make you go through all of the movies in general,
we're going to go through them all.
But, well, for me, 2 is the one that I remember the most because, again, it's like we're at a certain age where, the video generation, we discover certain things at certain times. The movie I couldn't finish, it took me like 5 times as American Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
I'd always get to certain points, and then I was like, I can't anymore.
And the sexy scene. Oh, a little uncomfortable.
But I was like, yeah, keep watching. But
you're talking about him and with the balloons and the little kid? Oh, yeah.
different kind of sexy. But Halloween 2 is the one that always stood out to me because that was the one that was always on TV. And and I don't know, it just had a very weird, mean spirit to it where like you're just getting into horror movies and learning about morality and things like that. And you're like, man, this is a nasty, mean movie.
The hot tub stuff. That's nasty.
It's just nasty stuff. And
sex and murder being really linked in that one, I mean.
The eyeball stabbing.
Oh, yeah.
Eyeball stabbing. It was also the first time that I realized there was different footage for TV than there was for theatrical stuff. Because I'd watch it on TV all the time and it's like different versions of kills and things like that or different dialogue. And then you go rent it at the video store. And you're like, wait a minute, what happened in that one scene where that guy survives in the TV version? I don't get it. So I don't know. I have a soft spot for 2, and I always tend to.
The Blu-ray of that looked fantastic.
Yeah.
That's the one where I forgot how great the shooting of that was.
How about that opening sequence? I mean, you always think about the hospital, blah blah blah, but that opening sequence is.
I think the
fantastic.
the opening is the best part about the film. It is. Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and then 3. 3, I was one of those kids that was like,
I love 3.
It doesn't. I love it now.
Loved it. No, I loved it back then.
You loved it back then.
It was so creepy and weird, and like, why is Michael Myers not in this? But Tom Atkins is in it. I remember that guy from Creepshow.
I saw 3 before I saw any of the other ones.
Wow.
Just because it timed right, like with me at the video store and everything. And so for some reason, 3 was the one I picked up first. And so when I then started doubling back and seeing the rest, I was never that into slashers. They were just so
were you confused?
I still watched them all.
Or
not as much.
You just watched okay.
No, like I really liked part 3, and then I went back and watched part 1. But I mean, I hung around people who I knew who Mike Myers was, just the same as I knew who Freddy was or Jason. So I knew that he was involved in it. But 3 was the one I started with, and then I went back and saw the others.
Often as a kid that you never asked questions. You were just like, I don't know, I just showed up and it was happening. There's like this mask and it crunches someone's head and there's like bugs come out.
Yeah, and that was it.
Amazing.
And I mean, and I was in the same boat of you where I was like watching like Faces of Death way too young, not even questioning what's going on. I'm just like, man, this kicks ass, this guy's getting eaten by a crocodile.
I don't ever parachute because of that movie.
There's one scene, and I think it's in Faces of Death 5, and I've mentioned it on the show
5?
before.
God.
I think so.
Sadist.
Where this girl goes into a lake and she comes out with this giant leech on her back, and then it's like, oh, the lake was next to this nuclear power plant. And for the longest time, my parents live on the Shenandoah River, and I would not get in the river because I was like, I didn't know leeches could get that long because we have leeches in the river, but they're seriously, it's like an inch long.
How did she grow up? Who was watching you?
That is clearly their jump the shark moment because I was completely all in. This is a real movie. Like, not until like 3 years ago, someone was like, that wasn't real. I was like, wait, what? Like,
and that's how it was for me when somebody told me when I was like probably 12 that it wasn't real. I was like, you mean that giant leech wasn't real? Like my world exploded right then.
They didn't eat the monkey brains?
Yeah.
Wait.
I'll admit I was too scared, but I never did the Faces of Death thing at a young age because I knew it was real, or supposedly, and I was like, I don't know if I could cross that line just yet.
Wow, you're such a...
Well, now I've seen it, of course.
Wow.
But I will say that the Blu-ray they put out a couple of years ago, I can't remember who did it, but there's an exceptional Blu-ray of it.
There shouldn't be a Blu-ray.
No.
It should be like on the worst VHS copy imaginable.
No, there shouldn't be.
You have to watch the back of someone's house.
How are you going to see... What was the doctor's name? I can't remember.
I thought it was Dr. Death or something crazy.
No,
like
it
that.
was like something. It was like Dr. Poops a lot or something. I'll look it up. No, it's seriously, it's like a funny name.
Which at that age you're just like, that's his name.
The benefit of the Bluray is that there is an excellent documentary and it's with the effects guy that pulled off everything.
Oh.
And so it's kind of like, obviously it pulls the veil back and explains everything that happened, but it was just fascinating, like them trying to trick people into like, oh, well, that was definitely real footage of an execution.
Well, the execution one, when the guy was bleeding out of his eyes and all that business.
I think the monkey brain stuff was real too. Is that the first one? I can't remember.
That's the first one, yeah.
And I think like there was like an electrocution.
Yes,
I
was,
assume that one's probably real, or maybe not. I don't know.
You guys are corrupting this Halloween conversation.
Anyway, his
back to
name,
it.
I wasn't that far off, was Francis B. Gross, Dr. Gross.
There you go.
I knew that it was like something punny. So yeah, Dr. Francis B. Gross.
But that was probably in the fantasy remake pile. I thought, like, wouldn't it be, or maybe not, but Will Ferrell would do these bits on Saturday Night Live where he'd just go way off out of orbit in these Adam McKay skits, and he'd always have a beard on and show a little too much chest. And I thought, well, it reminded me of Faces of Death, because there was this guy who looked like he was in his backyard drinking. And what the guy didn't know was there were alligators beneath him. Yeah. And I thought, like, wow, if you made the movie about these guys thinking, like, you know what we can do?
With Will Ferrell as the guy.
We don't have to struggle anymore, man. We can get in on this game.
I bet you can greenlight Will Ferrell's Faces of Death.
Oh my
by
God.
tomorrow.
That'd be good.
Did you guys see Mr. Mike's Mondo video?
Mr. Mike's Mondo.
Okay, I just pulled it up because I had to remember the name of it, but it's a spoof of these like Shocksploitation
He looks just
ones.
like him. He's got the fade glasses on.
That actually
I'll have
might
to post that. I want to see that.
I know it's somehow, this movie is somehow related to Saturday Night Live, so it might be kind of in the same vein here. I'm trying to see who's in this.
I do have a Halloween 3 question I want to follow up while you're looking that up. Did you guys, because I was doubly disappointed as a kid, I'll tell you why. Because I love it now. It's actually probably the one I'm most likely to rewatch every year, right? It's just something, the spirit of it's easy to rewatch in Atkins. That's all you have to say. But when I was a kid, not only did it not have Michael, which I was absolutely horrified, but the other thing I told all my friends, because this is pre-IMDb, everyone, I go, yeah, this is the new George Romero film because it's Season of the Witch. And I was telling everyone, because I got it mixed up with his actual movie, because all I had is Leonard Melton to go by. So I just, in my brain, Halloween 3 is going to be directed by Romero. Wow. It's going to be the best film ever. And that wasn't true either. So I was like a double liar. And kind of, this is Michael Myers and George Romero.
You're a huge Tommy Lee Wallace enthusiast.
I mean, I go on the record sometimes saying I think Fright Night 2 is this great, fun,
madness.
I want Tommy Lee Wallace more than any guest here. I don't know why. I can't explain it.
I like to think that you were referring like hundreds of kids to go watch Romero's Season of the Witch.
I know.
It's actually a very feminist film.
I've never seen it. I still haven't seen it because I thought this was it, and I'm too. I was impacted.
It's a little slow, but it's a very feminist film.
It's
I think it was mostly released under the title Jack's Wife because the main character's never actually given a name. She's just called Jack's Wife. It's that feminist, man. It's a statement.
But I got to admit, after 3, I don't have any memories until H2O. And then it wasn't until recently that I remembered. Kidding? Well, weirdly, maybe I can forward to later.
4 was the first one. 4 was the first one I saw in theaters.
Yeah,
the Daniel Harris.
Mine was 5.
Okay.
But I was busted trying to get into 4. And I thought, well, surely I can go see 4 because our town, I can say the town doctor, that's pretty much how kind of modest our population was. But yeah, so Dr. McPherson was going into that. He wouldn't go see something that was inappropriate for me. And they wouldn't let me in.
And I remember that H2O was like a pilgrimage for me in college because it was my freshman year.
I'm sorry.
I didn't know we were going film by film now,
It's hard to not talk about Josh Hartnett movies.
You went through some dark years. There's
Busta Rhymes, guys. Come on. Wait, he's the right. Yeah.
That's later.
Yeah, that's much later.
It's okay, LL Cool J, yo.
I still like 4. I mean, again, I have that memory of seeing it as a kid on the big screen and everyone going nuts for it and everything. And
it's scary.
It's fun.
It felt like it had moments that felt like the first. I remember that. Like it had atmosphere that felt like the first. It wasn't as great a movie, but
I actually I have this column that I write for our site now called #Respect, where it's like I look at specific characters in movies that go above and beyond and that deserve the #respect, plain and simple. And for me, the last time I saw Halloween 4, which was last year, it's Rachel Carruthers, played by Ellie Cornell, who, of course, at 12 years old, I had the biggest crush on. But the reason being is revisiting last year, what I realized about it is, okay, so this little girl is not really her sister. They make a point of saying that at the beginning of the movie, like, oh, look, I'm not your sister, but that doesn't mean I love you any less, right? The second, and I mean the second that this little girl is in danger, her adopted older sister does everything in her power to fucking protect her. And I never noticed it before as a kid. You're just like, oh yeah, they're running away. But I mean, the lengths that she goes to, like they're on a fucking roof. She's like chasing her in the school. It's like the fact that when danger happens and a character in a movie steps up to that level where they would do anything to protect that person, then you're like, oh my God, like that's a great character. And it's more of a sin that they killed her off right away in the follow-up because of that. Like, that's what I realized. It's the same thing with The Exorcist. I just revisited those movies, and it's like the fact that Father Karras, who had never met this little girl, does everything he can to save her.
Sure.
Those are like, I don't know why all of a sudden now I'm just really getting into that.
But he had personal beef with the opponent.
That's true.
So it was like, oh, so now you're going to pick on kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was always at a threshold moment. Someone that knows, someone who was cursed with the knowledge of how clever evil can be. Right. Stuck in a room with something innocent in the way. Like, oof, that's fun. And not fun, but it's a nice kettle whistle for a genuine terror moment.
Here's a genuine question, regardless of what you guys are thinking about, if you get this chance. Is it possible to make icons like Michael and Freddy and Jason scary again? I mean, it's obviously tough because, when I watch the Nightmare remake, I've said it a bunch of times on the show, but the one thing that struck me is like the old Corman quote, in my experience, the monster should be bigger than the heroine. And it wasn't in that case. Like Freddy was literally smaller and you're like, oh yeah, it doesn't feel imposing or something. But, I'm genuinely curious because, when the mythology, the good thing with Michael is he hasn't ever become a cartoon character, unlike Freddy. And even Jason, to an extent, I think has gone more that way with, there's an NES version and it's, I still think Michael Myers is still the only one that's never been really satirized, and probably because he's silent, or has been silent, but do you think that's one of the, even just seeing other people's movies, do you think that's one of the difficulties in these franchises in general?
Well, it's interesting how of the top 10 scary movies of the year, the stimulus rarely changes for what is in that top 3. They'll be fiercely debated, but it's something that takes the scare and takes the characters and has them balanced on the fulcrum of what the goal is. So, I can't undercut the scare with too much blood, can't overplay your hand with, too much, I guess just like if scare was just the goal, well, you'd be kind of undercutting the idea of if you spend 5 minutes with that character, show them help a little person. Show them stand up for something. Now put the scare in the room. Wow, I'm intrigued. And now I'm scared because I care about that.
Like I still know what you did last summer.
Yeah, of course.
Well, you really invested in Jennifer Love's cleavage.
But you answered your own question. Yeah. I mean, the others are tricky, but Halloween's not, because you can still, anyone can frame a shot where it's dark and Michael is there and you play that score and you're going to get scary.
And I think that's interesting because my favorite horror film of the year is basically just, it really is cashing in on all the things that Halloween did right. It's just, it follows as just silent things coming for you, score and framing. And you realize, okay, those things still work.
Talking about it follows again.
I won't stop until next year. It'll still be there until next year.
Somebody make something new that gets him going.
But please, I want to see The Witch. I'm going to see The Witch, and then maybe I'll shut up. But no, it's elemental, and I think that's the simple part. Is it just took through. Those are 3 great elements that worked in that movie. Yeah. Some of them talked themselves out of being scared, like Freddy, obviously, by the end. But the first film,
sure,
terrifying. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay. I'm glad I was able to answer my own question. Thank you for being a witness to me talking to myself.
Well,
first one you saw was 5.
Oh.
In the theater, yes.
Sorry. No.
She has to have a baby in the middle of this.
Yeah. Any minute now.
I'm going to have to take a bathroom break soon, guys.
Go pee.
Continue.
Why don't we talk about 5?
I'm good.
You won't miss anything.
She doesn't want to miss 5.
I don't want to miss 5.
When we get to 7, can I piss?
5 is one of those ones that I never want to watch again. I appreciate the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray is the first time that I got to appreciate the cinematography and like, oh, look at that. He totally is hiding in the background. I never noticed that before. But that's kind of the fail. It's like, oh, I never noticed that before.
That was some of the criminal cropping that was happening to these great wide 2.35 movies of theatrical that were then kind of condensed to VHS. Like the first time I saw Snake Plissken, he was 8 feet tall. because they didn't, the anamorphic math was still on the little black and white, 12-inch TV. It's like, wow, he's a giant amongst giants,
Yeah.
And so you missed that the station wagon would be kind of trolling in the background. You missed all the dorsal fin of the character, so to speak. The biggest, Roxy Fess, my friend Chad Fess's mom, was straight up tricked into taking Chad and I to Halloween 5 because we were way too young. And after the picture, Roxy thought she dropped me off, but I had just run around the car, gone towards the place, and when she wasn't looking, snuck in the back of the car again. Then waited a half block and went, bah! I got up, whoa! And then, that was the first time I think I heard Roxy Fess curse.
Wow. That is pretty evil.
Yeah, I didn't know it was evil at the time. I mean, after all, she is partially responsible for corrupting my fragile young mind.
Right.
Karma.
Right on. No. So did you guys go back and look at all these movies, in particular 5 and 6 and all them?
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything nice to say about 5?
Well, I mean, we've said it before and stuff like that. Our focus is more on the early films.
Right.
I'm trying to continue that timeline.
If anything, it's bring up Roger Ebert again. If you read Roger Ebert's review of 1 and 2 and 3, the 1 is the one you aspire to be.
Right.
When it's like, people who want, and I'm paraphrasing incredibly, but people can, condone or kind of push aside a comedy for being a comedy. But if you show up and you laugh, the comedy's done its job. That's a good comedy. And ladies and gentlemen, if your goal is to be terrified, if your goal is to experience horror, then look no further than Halloween, 4 stars. They're like, that's the ring you reach for. Anything other than that reach is a waste of time.
No. Elric is bouncing around the room.
I'm trying to scare you.
You tried to sneak up.
What's truly scary is I just went to a bathroom and the light is out, so it's pitch dark, and all I could think about was ghoulies. They were coming for me.
Really?
Anyway, much more terrifying than
Great cover.
yeah. That's about it, right?
Well, I mean, you guys are big fans of the genre in general. So how often? I know you guys work a lot, but how often do you keep on top of what's happening in the horror genre and stuff? What's been some of the movies that have inspired you lately? Like, oh man, that was. I mean, obviously you brought up It Follows, which everyone's mixed on, but is there stuff that keeps you guys excited about the genre?
In the realm of stuff,
Little mixed.
Cold in July is the movie I probably watched 3 times in a row over the course of a few days. Like just really, like, okay, this actually feels like there's some John Carpenter here. There's there's Kurt Russell's son. Like, boy, I didn't see that twist coming. I'm very unsettled, and yet it's beautiful depicting something so unseemly and edgy and raw. But man, Sam Shepard still brings it. Like, wow, it's cool to see Don
and a video
Johnson
store.
Again. Yes, absolutely.
With really bad stuff happening in the back.
Exactly, right? And
that's
then,
a really good movie.
And Michael C. Hall is like, And I love that even in the midst of what would be almost a Southern Gothic crime thriller, no, they're big visual get. Right in the middle is the drive-in playing good old Night of the Living Dead. And yet, even in the realm where we know that in the public domain, if you got to put a movie that someone's seen on TV, you can get no, they did it. So it was a declaration of like, we chose it, we made it bigger, it's slick, and it's actually overshadowing some of the demons our main characters are going through. And I thought, well, good on you, Mr. Mickle.
And he's gotten better with each film, and there aren't many people like each
exciting.
film was a little bigger, and just I don't know. Like I thought his We Are the
We
remake,
Are What We Are.
The ending of that, the last
awesome.
like 10 minutes of that, I was like, just was on all cylinders, for such a subtle build up, it really delivered at the end.
And I haven't missed, or I've seen every episode, I think, of The Walking Dead at least once, twice, thrice. That's a joy. Television has really stepped up.
That's nice to hear, because no one talks about Walking Dead. I mean, I'm a big fan of I think it gets, the last couple of seasons have gotten better and better, with Rick getting more interesting and more interesting. So, you know, I'm a fan.
Second to last episode of this last season opened with a Nine Inch Nails song. It's like, that is I mean, wow. You know, we've been trying on just about every single movie we've been a part of to get a Nine Inch Nails song. And you're like, we're going to need to add another $1 million to the budget. Right. Then I'm watching that, you know, Walking Dead. I'm like, bah, and they use it beautifully.
They had the numbers behind them.
Yes.
To get that.
And that music and that show are such a nice calibration that, yes, Carol making mac and cheese is intense.
Did you like the new show or no?
Fear the Walking Dead, I'm behind. So I'm only 2 of the 6 episodes. Right? Yeah. So I'm 2 in, and I went all in on Ray Donovan this year. Like that was the stop everything show. It's great.
I think it has potential. It's just unfortunately because you know the backstory, because you've seen so many zombie movies. You're a little, you know. But there's a couple good characters in there.
Well, yeah. From what I've seen so far, I mean the struggling drug addicted son was great, and I thought, you know, Kim Dickens making the effort to not break into the pharmacy, but the secret cabinet at the school was just little touches like that where, like, boy, that's so human. You know, it's what we do for our own if they're hurting. Wow.
It was cool, the publicity I think It Follows got. I mean, I know you guys don't want to talk about that.
I do.
No, we can.
Elric always loves it.
He just brings it up a lot.
I mean, remember, it's not very often that something sort of gets that kind of attention, and then, you know, it's like, you have to see, and there's an excitement to go see it and all that. And I know it has some logic issues as it goes forward, but, you know, in terms of the filmmaking, it was great. It was the John Carpenter movie that John Carpenter never made, you know? Like it had that the tone and the feeling and the vibe and just the dread, like the pending dread that you don't necessarily see all that often in film, horror films. You know, people kind of go for it, making things harder and harder and harder. While that was much more sort of took its time and had that cool tone. So that I like that one was.
And again, it's how you see these, because you just talked about the hype and people hyping it up. If you can see these things at festivals, that's one of still the great things about festivals. Is like you knew nothing. All I knew is it had played at Cannes. That's all I knew is at AFI. I sit down, it's late at night, and then that happens. And so I'm like, versus if I'd seen a trailer and if I'd heard people talk about it, I might have reacted differently. I don't know. You know, it's you know, the internet's such a different way of viewing things now.
I saw Paranormal Activity like that. It was a screening in like 2007 before anything, and I think it was screened like once before or something, and like most of the room didn't care for it at all. But I was like, I don't know. It's actually like when they locked off that camera, you know, if a movie scares you a few times, it's succeeded.
Yeah, and that one definitely did,
especially now. And I didn't know anything. They locked off that camera. It was really quiet. And it was dark, and you're waiting for something to happen, and then it gets you. And it like totally got me a few times. It was the same thing when I saw like Insidious the first time. It got me like 5 times.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Like,
love that one.
So if anything can get you, that is quite an achievement.
I wasn't a big fan of part 3 of Insidious, but it still had 2 of the best jump scares of the year. One was like with the bus, and there was another one, the creature, the kind of bad guy of the movie. They actually had some still getting you, like, and so there's still something there. You know, it's still worth making if they can still get us. I think. But
well, you know, you've got such a core group of characters that we've now been through 2 supernatural adventures with that we care about. You know, like
it's often the new characters that are harder to integrate. Yeah,
they get their 15 to 17 minutes to ingratiate themselves to our hearts. But Lin Shaye walks in and you just want to hug her, and it's really cool.
Yeah. By part 5, I'll care about Dermot Mulroney. Great actor, by the way, but just not maybe in a paranormal movie. I don't know what it is. You know, too much.
What old movie do you wish would kind of resurface in a way in the cinemas? Like, to put a finer point on it, what is missing? What is the type of horror film that should be released today? Not necessarily with its vintage practical effects or whatnot, but what is the stimulus that's missing from horror right now?
Creature features. And no one does them anymore because it's a budget. Because if you CG your creature feature, you end up with something like Mama, where everybody's like, oh, well, I was with you until you revealed that thing. And what the hell is that thing? And practical creatures cost millions. And so no one does creature features anymore. And I mean, even when I'm in like pitch meetings or talking with, different agents about what people are buying, everyone says, no creature features. If it's like in any type of scale, if it's anything more than like it looks human, then don't do it, because it's going to cost over $3 million and nobody wants to spend more than that. So that is the biggest thing that I'm missing right now is, creature features. And when you do see them, the creature will be very quick. Like I just watched that Alien one a couple of weeks ago, whose name's escaping me. He listens to the
Alien.
show. Was it called? No, Pod.
Ridley Scott.
No, it was called Pod Dick.
I was going to say
Pod Dick.
Yeah,
Pod Dick. The new
Pods
film.
and you're a dick.
Comma. I thought you were an English major.
No, I watched Pods a couple of weeks ago.
Singular pod.
Pod. Thank you.
Mickey Keaton listens. Come on.
I know. And like I said, it was a good movie, and the creature in it was really good, but you could tell that it was brisk. And Jeff Farley, the guy who did it, did such a good job with the effect. But I know that if it had been on screen for longer, if you turned up the lights a little bit, you up your budget with that. But that's the type of movie that I'm missing, is something otherworldly and other creaturely.
I can summarize what's missing in 2 words, and it's Don Coscarelli. Chop knife. Done forever. I'm never even coming back on the show. I'm making a statement. I've been saying for years they should have gotten him to direct the Insidious sequels. Like bringing a guy like that to that franchise would just blow my... And what I mean, I actually agree with Bekah to an extent. What's missing, I agree, it's the creature features, but I'd go further, and it's the thing we always talk about on the show, the 80s mentality, the fantastic treatment of creature features. Not just monster movies, but the way we look at them with wonder, and it's a mixture of supernatural and monster and sci-fi, and they're all mashed up together and with ideas and creativity and young directors like him when he was young,
But you know that there's a trend now that you for horror movies you can't pitch anything that is going to cost more than $5 million.
Yep.
Right.
I've been hearing under 3 from everybody. Like
Under
you got to
3 is
stay
another
under
Weren't
3.
a lot of those movies like Coscarelli was an independent filmmaker? I mean, Phantasm movies were cheap. Beastmaster, he ran into
This was
issues,
also,
but
I don't know. I feel like practical was a whole different ballgame then, because now people have seen CG, so they expect a lot more out of practical. So when you're seeing something like Frank Henenlotter, like if you're looking at Elmer I know, and I look back at Brain Damage with such oh my god, that's such a wonderful movie. But then I go back and watch it, and it's literally like a fucking worm puppet in a tub.
Yeah.
And then I'm like,
Genius.
okay, people won't accept that anymore. No,
people are scared that people won't accept it. People will still accept it.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
Man in a suit will always win. That Brian Yuzna interview that you're going to post soon. He goes on about it. It's just like people, when there's somebody physically in front of you, it's just you buy it.
Totally, yeah.
If the practical, you just buy it. It doesn't matter.
But I think that those are really hard to get funded, because
I agree.
just
They
in my
are,
experience, as soon as I'm like, I've got this awesome creature feature. Nope, sorry, we can't afford the CG, we can't afford the practical, and if we do shitty practical, no one will buy it, and it's awful. And that's it. And it's like the conversation stops there. I don't know. Have you guys had the same thing?
I was watching with a VFX wonderkind.
Well, we did just sell a show to ABC that's completely about monsters, but yeah.
So that's refreshing.
Was that your mic drop?
The door is open.
But it's funny because we haven't really had those conversations of like, great, so how are you going to do
You just wrote it. You just write it.
Like, it's like practical, and then you enhance it with CGI. It's like, oh, great. How much is that?
That's the one thing that Eli Roth show, I didn't watch all of it. What's it called?
Episode, right?
Hemlock Grove.
The one thing that did do is a couple of those effects, were...
No, you're crazy.
That werewolf
There
effect,
was
you know
one
that?
transformation
Awful.
scene.
I love that werewolf effect.
Yeah.
I watched it on YouTube. It's awful CG.
I thought it was
Awful.
great. No, it was a mixture of things, though. It wasn't just CG.
I know. Yeah.
I liked it. I didn't watch all the show. I only watched a couple
Rob
episodes
doesn't
of
even
it.
get out words. He highly disagrees.
That is the trickiest one, because you've seen it done so well. 30 years ago with American Werewolf in London, and ones you see now, it's like when they're CGI, it's really hard to do. But and then doing practically, it almost is like. And I know the one you're talking about, Hemlock, and people really liked it. A lot of people really liked it.
Don't get it.
Often it feels like you're missing one or two steps. Like it's like changing. Wait, you went too fast, and now I'm out of it.
Yeah,
and it's a tough. That is one of the toughest ones to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty about the third Twilight film is, I'm not worthy to be here anymore.
But yeah, I also feel like, back to that same thing. We're missing anything of a grander scale. And that's why we don't see kind of the fantastic anymore, is because, and Whereas I'm hearing, everything below 3 million. I'm hearing even more everything below 750,000. Can you?
Whoa, that was Insidious 4 calling.
That was trippy.
That was you coming back in time to knock the door to warn yourself about the budget. Wow.
Don't talk about the budget.
Biggest joke ever.
I mean, you do work there now.
No, but that's not even like a Blum thing. That's like an everywhere thing. Like go to AFM this year and well, you can't because it's an industry thing. But everybody there is like 715,000 and below. And or at least that was last year. Was the number I kept hearing is like, this is what we're buying, 750 and below. And you're disagreeing.
Oh, no, it's just shaking my head in disdain.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't that long ago we were seeing a really damn good remake of Dawn of the Dead for $25 million. And then it was followed up by a pretty damn good remake of The Crazies. Yes, they were remakes.
Yeah, they're both good.
Well,
They were both pretty good.
That $18, $19 to $25 million Blade. Can you imagine Blade done for under $5 million?
How good is Blade 2? Blade 2 is such a good movie.
Like, if you compare a movie by the same filmmaker that's similar movies, look at Insidious and then look at Conjuring. And there's a big difference between them.
Oh, yeah. Conjuring's like a masterful piece of work.
It is.
And I mean,
he got the scale to do it,
You have to put it into scope because I know people are listening at home going, $1 million, that's like a fortune. But when you think about, how many people does a movie employ for like a month and a half time period?
Yeah.
I mean, you're employing hundreds of people for a month and a half
You're not
time
shooting
period.
on film. I know where you're going with this. You're not shooting on film.
Let's shoot on film, guys. But even still, I mean, when you're talking about 750,000 and you're employing literally hundreds of people for like a 6 to 10 week time period, I mean, it's nothing. I mean, like there's nothing left for the actual film. And that's why you're ending up with a lot of these films that take place in one room.
Well, yeah,
because we can afford
it comes
one
down
room.
to how much is each day going to cost.
Yep.
And it's it's going to cost $100,000. Well, so you're shooting for 10 days?
You're already blowing your budget.
That's
You're done.
How are you going to shoot for 10 days and do a complete script? You
Yeah.
can't. So,
I want you guys to start your own Project Greenlight where you guys are the mentors funding the next, like your own version of that, the horror version. And Blumhouse are going to sponsor it. I'm going to tell you. It's going to be Blumhouse's and you're the host.
We might want to talk with a couple people about this first, guys.
I can bypass all that.
Just a couple people.
Because I have a microphone.
Our version was we'll just crush the dreams right away.
Oh, okay.
Like, you can't do that. You can't do that.
If you were mentors, what would be the first thing you guys would say genuinely to people getting that kind of role chance right now? If you were their mentors, like what's the first piece of advice, warning, entering this career? What's worked for you?
Defiance. Every time we were told no, we told them how.
I like that.
So telling the man to stuff it. Got it.
No.
No.
It's not.
Coming
You
up
don't
with
say it.
solutions.
You say it by doing it in the way that we had some rules on certain projects that you couldn't have rain, you couldn't do explosions, you couldn't have animals, you couldn't have a car crash. So on the lowest budget movie we did, we had a dog attack that was set on fire and used as a battering ram into a shotgun fight before the character was flipped in an ambulance from a house that had it was in the rain.
Well, but keep in mind, a lot of this is being
like that.
resourceful too, because like for example, if Feast worked in some people may disagree, but Feast worked and The Collector worked because while we were filming those movies, we were doing additional things that like you traditionally wouldn't do in a movie. Like John Gooley was going in after hours and picking things up. He was going, so we were shooting 5-day weeks, and he was going on day 6 and 7 alone because the stage was there and everything was there, and he was shooting stuff, and all that stuff goes into the movie.
Right.
And so like on The Collector, I mean, The Collector is thrown together of a principal photography and then 5 other 2 or 3 pickup days where we would go to complete different locations, and Marcus knew I needed this shot, and then it got put in there. And these are all on like different, cameras and all that, and it's just and you don't and you
But
put
the
together.
same crew, I tell you, the folks that show up, like for example, the one we had all the time, so to speak, we needed for all the violence, but when it came time for the character, the first 20 minutes of the movie, you don't need that. Like, I kind of think we want to know that.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where, as politically kind as it could be, was like, all right, how much for the 7-minute scene that sets up this is a thief with a daughter trying to, how much? You've got, okay, you're budgeting 6 hours for that, and you want it to happen in the doorway. I think we need 2 days, so I'll take that. And then
I mean, you got to learn how to
did it.
And you got to learn kind of how to do everything on your own, and just expect that that's what you're gonna have to do 9 times out of 10. And that's the reality of it, And trying to fight sort of the system is a losing battle. You have to just, figure it out on your own often.
Right.
Do it yourself. And the feast was shut down. And we just started, Gulaga was shooting stuff like on the roof of the place where we were doing it. And he had access to the equipment. He kept doing it. Same thing with the collector.
And to clarify, not shut down as in like this is done, but that was right at the separation between the formation of the Weinstein Company and separating from Disney. So caught in a very quiet tide were a number of projects. So, and the reality show. So we signed on to something that was supposed to be 6 months max, 18 months. And so the reality show was running out of cash. There was an Avid that had a movie called Feast in it that was there. So it's like, hey, you guys want to hang out this weekend and shoot some more stuff? Like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, interesting.
So we could, a lot of people would have just left and gone on and do whatever and be like, I'm not getting paid, but we kind of stayed on it and just added stuff and tried to make it better. And then, it came on and turned out pretty good. So,
yeah.
Well, I mean, I always love the little opening is a little bit of 16 millimeter footage that John shot.
Not even. That's 8. And that was, so that was
That
shot less than 5 weeks before the print was struck and it was projected. And that was a real dog found at the side of the road and dug up. And I remember how it tasted, unfortunately. It was put on the top of John's car and we had to drive with the windows down because it smelled so bad. And the fur of the carcass went right into my mouth. That's pretty bad.
We went out to Lancaster with no permits and no anything. Went on one of those just old roads they have and just shot stuff. And it made it into the movie. So especially when you're doing lower budgeted type stuff, you have to do that because there's those little moments make it feel a little bit bigger and a little bit more unique. It's all these little, the same thing was done on Saw. Like when they first did it, it felt too small or just more like too much like a thriller. And so they just went back and found little things to make it feel a little bit bigger. Like The Collector, that was, you don't know how hard that was to make. And Marcus specifically designed certain shots to make it feel a little bit bigger. And it was either some kid that he found who knew some effect stuff that he sort of used his own money to do. And, it's all those.
Actually, it's not untrue. Traded writing a SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design student's thesis film script in exchange for VFX.
My favorite thing you guys have ever done, The Candidate.
Okay, right.
I'm not even kidding. It's my favorite. It's one of I showed it at Jump Cut to a whole room full of people. It's got my Tom Gallagher.
Short?
Yeah, it's the Tom Gallagher short.
Oh, okay.
The Candidate's 20 minutes. Robert Picardo, David Carlack directed it. I'm from SCAD too, and I think he was a year after me. And it's just, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful movie. It has one of the best twists. The way it builds up to it emotionally, I just love the movie.
So that was written for David in exchange for him to do some VFX work on.
See, I didn't know that part of it.
The Collector.
I was housing him too. He was in my spare room. So he could do things on a laptop that they had a special VFX budget for The Collector that disappeared after 4 shots. It was gone. I was like, are you kidding me? Like it was weird. Something was just kind of missing on that movie all the time. And so I was like, no, this is not impossible. Moved an Avid into my living room, where the cops showed up one night with their tasers in hand because we were sound mixing the end. And there it is. I'm like, sounds like an actual murder was going on. Like, our bad.
Yeah,
probably shouldn't do this at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I'll post that on our wall. It's on Vimeo, and it's. I can't believe you weren't part of that one because that was one of our ones, where the Gullagers came and we showed the film, and it played great.
Tom was good, wasn't he?
Tom's, I just think he's one of my favorite acters.
And the Gullagers in the elevator.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah. And there's that music video too that they're in the Gullagers.
Oh yeah, that is
Nico Vega. Nico Vega, yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah, he directed that.
Oh, you directed it? That's a great video. Where John punches her in the nose.
Yeah. But that was also the blending of the Super 8 and the 16 millimeter film. Like, so I'm definitely, you can see like, gosh, you actually still can shoot on film. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
What is hard is the obstacle of sometimes the executive mind that hasn't gone through a number of trenches that have figured out the math.
Right.
Because it's like, well, you want to spend it now up at the front? You want to spend it here in post when you're trying to make it look like film. Like if you're going to add grain to a digital image, aren't you taking away the one thing digital gives you? The clean image. So this comes with it.
Yeah.
Already,
Save you time later.
Like it's just like
debate over.
Well,
Take that, Keanu.
to wrap up,
Yeah.
to wrap up, before we close, I don't want you guys to take this the wrong way, but I'm curious. For Feast 2 and 3, were they kind
Hold
of
on,
like?
what? Where is it? Okay, careful.
Were they kind of like a dare to see what you could get away with? Because,
that was
all right. I rather like Feast 3 a lot. Feast 2 I have mixed feelings about, but
Well, okay, so Feast, it was interesting because
Becca's going to have the baby.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to sit for 3 hours with
Why don't
this
you
thing,
stretch?
guys.
Stand up and stretch.
I
Stretch
keep
while we do
not wanting
Feast.
to walk around.
Make Jane Fonda notice.
because I'm so amazed, and I don't mean this in the wrong way. I'm just so amazed that Feast 2 and 3 exist, and I need to know why.
Well, the script for Feast 3 was never made. The script for Feast 2 was cut in half.
and then
So it became
expanded.
Feast 2 and Feast 3. And I remember I was in the...
It was a strike. This is a strike movie.
Yep.
So there was, the strike was coming, and we were going into. It was going. This movie was. This is Dimension old days, where like there was going to be a movie that was going to be made. Like who knows what it was going to be, but it was going to happen, and it was like we were writing up to the last minute of the strike.
I was in a different time zone, so at my midnight, I could send it to him for the additional 3 hours.
Yeah, and
Wow.
And it was like we weren't able to do anything after it. It sort of just there was a lot of improvisation.
I couldn't tell. Cute baby throw.
That was the one
and there was
all-in
no
scene.
money.
Okay, that's a great scene.
It was the genesis of Feast 2. It's like if we want to go there, this is the one thing you've never seen before at this moment.
And one bummer was because Gary Tunnicliffe was such a big part of the first movie, and then he couldn't do the sequel, and so it was things like that happened, and then it sort of just spun out of control, and so it's just and we didn't have enough money, and we were shooting this crazy location in Louisiana. That they were like protesting in this small town as it was being shot.
Wow.
And so the first movie we were resourceful. I mean, that movie, the third or the second and third one, like Gulig was literally piecing that movie together as he was editing, and he'd have to go. We need this shot, and he'd go on the roof of this place and like shoot this shot. Like it was like the bus extraction scene. You remember that?
Yeah, we each had straws with a little bit of Fuller's Earth and whatnot. John had purchased a mini school bus off of eBay and had some little dirt. And so on the roof of Neo Art and Logic, where it was editing, we'd go and blow the straws, and then up would come it, and then he'd shake the camera a little bit, and out would come the bus. He'd be like, "Okay."
Its problem is that it was way too ambitious for the resources that it was given, and we really didn't have the sort of parent in that situation being like, all right, you guys can't do that.
Had it just been one, would it have been like stronger, you think, if it was just a 2 and they fit it all?
The script for 2, I mean, that was a blast. I'd go down swinging defending that one, which was interesting to see, like, but you can't just cut something in half and then like, you've got parts of movie here and parts of movie there.
I mean, 2 just literally, it stops, right?
Yeah.
It stops, and then you're like, wait, what? And then 3 picks up. And
right from the opening, like the opening scene of 3 is awesome. I remember like, oh, all right, yeah, we're back on track.
It kind of feels like a midpoint of a movie.
Right.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Wow.
So,
well, I think they had just had Kill Bill, and so like, well, can't you just do that? That's what it was. It was we wrote 2 scripts. It was Feast 2 and Feast 3, and then I think we got a call one day from one of the executives, and he said, like, hey, so instead of that, why don't we just take 2 and make it longer and cut it in half? And it was at a point where we just had to say, oh, okay, I guess let's do that and try our best. But that is one thing about Gulager. He's a good director in that he will try to make every situation work. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but he doesn't really buckle under the stress that you might expect in a situation. Because it's hard. Like it's... Yeah. There's so many people, so much can go wrong, so much does, and he just surrounds himself with his family and friends and people he can rely on, and they'll eventually get it done. It may not be great, but it's just, they will get it done. So
wow. I just remember Ryan Turek explaining me the last 2 minutes of Feast 3.
Yep.
and I couldn't fucking believe him. I could not believe it.
So then this
and
robot
I love that
comes
ending.
down.
Yes, there you go. Spoiler.
At that point, the strike was over, so that was written. Yeah, because that was, and if you see who's credited as the songwriter of that, or if anyone ever cares to take the Spanish lyrics and translate them, they tell a story.
Oh, wow.
That could be an article for your
shirtless crew chasing a robot.
The secret story of
how hasn't Brian Collins written a story on that one?
We're gonna bug him.
So what happened with the third one we had? There was no ending. It was never shot, and you weren't going to get any more money. So what are you going to do? And so we're like, well, what if that happened? And they're like, okay. And when we I feel like maybe we wrote it or we turned it in. I guess when we wrote it, the executive called us and was like, what the fuck is you guys making fun of me? Think this is funny? We're like, no, this is the ending. He's like, oh, okay. Like, he thought we were like fucking with him.
Right.
He's like pissed. And then like, no, that's what the ending's going to be. And he's like, okay. And that was that.
That's what I meant by dare. I hope you didn't take an offense by that.
I do want to tell the original concept of 3, though.
I remember it being cool in my head, but I don't remember what it was.
So the original beats of 2 were, imagine, like, of those movies, it really is just, it's pretty airtight. And so at, like, minute 85, they go outside, and there's, like, this bridge to cross, and you're like, I think we got a way to kill these bastards. So we're introducing another character and people who are going to start to pay off on what 3 will be, but it ends with the biggest beast, the most menacing beast, all of a sudden stopping on a dime, and you see that it's got a collar, and you just see a metal fist come in and yank it. And so 3 was a commentary, like we were going to be done with the monster movie in 2 and start picking on atomic age movies in 3. So 3 starts with 30 minutes in the 1950s, 30 minutes wrapping up our present story, and 30 minutes in the future where we see what has happened. And so by that point, and I remember John talking about it, maybe having Sage play the one survivor in the future who goes around and he had brilliant ideas. Like mannequins, storefront mannequins would always be saying, "It's okay, come out. It's okay, come out." But no, that was a trap by them now.
That sounds cool.
It was because that was 3. So three different eras. So you see kind of how this happened and how we courted our own demise, and then our.
Keep in mind, we had after part of Project Greenlight is you have to make 2 more movies for Dimension. So that this was part of that deal.
So it's contractual. Huh?
Well, we had to do it, and it was like I feel like it was like August when we got the call, and the strike was happening on November 1st. And we had to write and get a movie into production in that time. 2 movies that we're going to shoot back to back. So we had to write 2 scripts. And so it was insanity. And that's what you got.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to revisit those, I think, this Halloween season.
We should.
One last little anecdote that's definitely worth talking to Gallagher about at some point. Which, by the way, next Friday is our 10-year anniversary of Feast 1.
Oh, my God.
We're at Screamfest.
Oh.
The first Feast?
Yes.
Get out of here.
And a bunch of, it's like
Holy
us
shit.
and Krista Allen and Dwayne Whitaker and Judah Friedlander, I think.
Maybe he's going to try.
Oh, yeah. Judah's coming into town soon.
Honey Pie's coming, right?
I believe
maybe.
so.
Judah would like to be on our show.
Josh is going to be there. Josh Zuckerman. Nick Phillips, Chris Moore, all the Gouligers, Diane, Clue, Tom, I imagine. Well, I don't know if Tom will be, but so we're all going to be there. It's Screamfest. I think it's the 13th, maybe. It's one of the nights. So they're going to show it, and we'll all be there, and
That's amazing. I can't wait.
16th, I think. 16th, maybe.
I saw it on the big screen. I'm going to see it on the big screen again.
Gosh, I know. We're like lamenting, like, why didn't one of us grab a print? Like, we had 35 millimeter prints.
Oh, wow.
I know, yeah.
Aye.
Gouliger asked for it, and they were like, what do you want with it? They're always very suspicious of Gouliger.
As they should be.
I can't see why.
He's so nice. He's so talented. What does he want?
All right. Well, Bekah's going to explode.
If we do another 3-hour shows, I'm making you guys get me one of those shiatsu massage chairs. I can't sit.
Well, you've got next week off, so you can rehabilitate.
I know.
We're letting you out for a week.
No more 3 hours of sitting.
Well, I hope you two have a great Halloween season, and I hope you enjoy it and get inspiration from the season going forward, and all the best.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Marcus and Patrick, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We will see you next
Thank you
week.
for this mix.
The Halloween mix. I
The
want your full
Halloween
review.
Rob G mix.
That's right.
And
That's
Rob,
good
we'll see you
stuff.
next week, probably. No, Bekah.
So yeah, I'm off next week, and
Where are you going again?
Good riddance.
I'm going to the.
Sorry.
I am going to the 4-State Slasher Con.
Where is that?
That is in Winchester, Virginia. It's the first convention ever in my hometown, and so I am like excited as shit to be as a guest.
Winchester,
there.
Virginia.
Go see her.
I'm wearing a T-shirt somewhere. What is the chance?
Dinosaur Land.
Yeah,
What is
so
the chance?
it's like Winchester. When I was growing up, the only like type of horror that we had was like this wonderful crappy video store in Stephen City called On Track Video, and the guy never stopped you from renting anything, and they had just everything.
Those guys were heroes.
Yeah, I
remember
know.
those
They
guys.
also never checked who went into the beaded curtain. So, like, I went into the porn room way too early and was like, I don't even know what's going on. I'm confused and scared. And yeah, so I learned a lot at On Track Video. But yeah, that was the longest thing. And then we got an Alamo Draft House a couple of years ago, and there's been like a nice horror explosion there. So I'm psyched to go to the first.
Wait, how do you have an
now.
Alamo Draft House there and we don't have one in LA?
I know. Is that not
Wait, we
crazy?
do. Well,
So-
we do have one in LA. It's building.
It's building right now,
It's
but
actually
we
not far
had
off.
one in Winchester, Virginia.
downtown. How far?
Downtown.
Oh, I
We
think they
had
took
one-
4 or 5 months.
Yeah, we had one in Virginia
got
before
its
they got
location.
one in New York. Ours in Virginia, and this is in it's a very tiny town, like very, very tiny. We had one there. It's probably been there for 7 years now. I would think.
Come on, Bekah. Some of us have to go to the bathroom and we're
know,
pregnant.
yeah,
and
what's
like,
going on?
We have a drive-in too. We had
Great.
when I was a kid, we only had the drive-in, so I saw a lot there when I was.
Tell
a
us
kid,
more
but-
about this part of Virginia.
Oh my gosh!
Tell me more. People need to know about Virginia.
I was talking about the damn convention. So anyway, come to the
that's right,
4-State
that's right.
Slasher Con
Go say hi to her.
and Elric's a dick.
Yes, do say that.
I've called you that twice tonight. Good job.
Yes, you're welcome.
I can't sit down anymore,
Okay,
so
all right, fair enough.
I gotta stand up.
Thank you guys. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye-bye.